I arrived at my parents' house for Thanksgiving with my 8-year-old daughter, Emma, feeling hopeful about reconnecting with family. As I walked through the door carrying my homemade pumpkin pie, my father's voice boomed across the room. "Look who finally showed up, the family disappointment." The room fell silent as 20 relatives turned to stare. My mother shook her head in disgust. "Still no ring on that finger, Sandra. Still dragging Emma around without a proper father." The judgment in their eyes cut deeper than any knife could. I forced a smile and set the pie on the kitchen counter, trying to keep my composure for Emma's sake. She clutched my hand tighter as we navigated through the crowd of relatives who barely masked their disdain. "Sandra, darling," my sister Patricia cooed from the living room couch, her voice dripping with false sweetness. She sat surrounded by other family women, each sporting designer handbags and elaborate wedding rings. "How wonderful that you could join us. I was just telling everyone about the lovely vacation James planned for us. 3 weeks in the Maldives. Of course, that's what happens when you marry a successful dentist." The women tittered around her, shooting glances my way. I guided Emma toward the kids' table, hoping to spare her from the adult conversation. Speaking of success, my brother Marcus chimed in from across the room, twirling his car keys with the Mercedes emblem prominently displayed. "How's that little job of yours going, Sandra? Still working at that office downtown? Must be tough making ends meet on a secretary's salary." "I actually got promoted recently," I said quietly, not mentioning that the promotion was to CEO of my own company. "Promoted to what, senior coffee maker?" Marcus laughed at his own joke, and several cousins joined in. "Come on, we all know single moms can't land real careers. No offense, but who's going to take you seriously when you have to leave every day at 3 to pick up Emma?" My cousin Jennifer, who had always been particularly cruel since we were children, suddenly stood up with theatrical surprise. "Oh my goodness, Sandra, I completely forgot to mention. I saw you at the Riverside Food Bank last month. I was dropping off donations from my charity league." She paused for dramatic effect, ensuring everyone was listening. "But you were in the other line. You know, the one for people picking up food." Gasps rippled through the room. My Aunt Martha clutched her pearl necklace. "Sandra, are you struggling that much? Why didn't you ask for help?" Before I could explain that I was there delivering a $50,000 donation check, my Uncle Robert cleared his throat and stood up from his armchair. His face was stern, more serious than I'd ever seen it. "Well, this is as good a time as any to address the elephant in the room," he announced, pulling out a manila folder from his briefcase. "I've been managing our family trust, the one Sandra's grandfather established for all of us." Everyone leaned in, sensing drama. My heart raced, knowing what was coming, but unable to stop it. Robert opened the folder and spread bank statements across the coffee table. "The trust that has been supporting this family for years, paying for our mortgages, our cars, our children's education. It's nearly depleted. There have been massive withdrawals over the past 5 years." He turned his gaze directly at me, his eyes cold and accusing. "Interesting timing, isn't it, right around when Sandra became a single mother, right when she would have needed money the most?" The room erupted. My mother gasped. My father's face turned red with rage. Patricia smugly shook her head as if she'd suspected this all along. "I've tracked every transaction." Robert continued, his voice rising. "Hundreds of thousands of dollars mysteriously vanishing. And who else has access to these accounts? Who else would be desperate enough to steal from their own family?" Emma tugged at my sleeve, confused by the sudden hostility. "Mommy, what's happening?" I stood there, stunned by the accusation. Those withdrawals he was talking about weren't going out of the trust. They were my deposits going in, keeping the trust afloat, while my family spent recklessly. But as I opened my mouth to explain, I realized the truth would sound more unbelievable than the lie they were constructing. Robert continued spreading papers across the table, his fingers trembling with righteous indignation. Each bank statement showed large transfers, which I recognized as my own automated deposits designed to keep the family trust from bankruptcy. "Look at these amounts." Robert pointed to the figures. 50,000 here, 75,000 there. Someone has been bleeding us dry. My father Thomas grabbed the papers, studying them with growing fury. These transfers coincide perfectly with your rent payments downtown, don't they, Sandra? That expensive apartment you somehow afford. Dad, you don't understand what you're looking at. I tried to interject, but he slammed his fist on the table. Don't lie to us, we've supported you through everything. When Brad left you, when you insisted on keeping Emma despite having no means to raise her properly. And this is how you repay us, by stealing. My Aunt Martha was already on her phone. I'm calling my nephew. He's a detective with the police department. This is grand theft. Please, Aunt Martha, there's no need for that, I said calmly, though my heart was pounding. Emma had started crying, overwhelmed by the angry voices. I knelt beside her, whispering reassurances while the storm continued around us. Mommy's not a thief, Emma sobbed, and my heart broke at having to expose her to this. Of course she is, sweetie, Patricia said with fake sympathy. Sometimes adults do bad things when they're desperate. Your mommy just needs help. My mother, Eleanor, who had been suspiciously quiet, finally stood. Her expression was cold, calculating. She reached into her purse and pulled out a thick envelope. I hired someone, she announced, her voice cutting through the chaos. A private investigator, because I've noticed things about Sandra's lifestyle that didn't add up. The room fell silent. Even Robert looked surprised. Eleanor pulled out photographs and laid them on the table one by one. Sandra entering the Ritz-Carlton, multiple times per week, always through the private entrance. Sandra at high-end restaurants. Sandra shopping at stores that sell handbags worth more than most people's cars. I stared at the photos, recognizing each location. The Ritz-Carlton, where I owned the penthouse. The restaurants where I held business meetings. The boutiques where I occasionally rewarded myself for successful deals. There's only one explanation for a single mother to frequent such places. Eleanor continued, her voice dripping with disgust. She's selling herself. She has a sugar daddy. Multiple ones, probably. The room exploded again. Cousins whispered behind their hands. My male relatives looked at me with a mixture of disgust and something worse. Even the teenagers were staring, having overheard enough to understand the implication. That's not true, I protested, but my voice was drowned out. It explains everything, Patricia added eagerly. The mysterious job, the nice clothes, why she never brings anyone to family events. She's ashamed of what she's become. This is worse than theft, my father growled. This is prostitution in front of your daughter. Emma looked up at me with confused, tear-filled eyes. Mommy, what are they saying? Nothing, baby. Just adult misunderstandings. I soothed her rage building in my chest at having to explain such ugliness to my child. Marcus jumped in, emboldened by the mob mentality. No wonder Brad left. He probably found out what kind of woman you really are. Poor Emma growing up in that environment. You know what, we should drug test her, Jennifer suggested. People in that lifestyle are usually on something. I'll arrange it, Martha said, still holding her phone. My nephew can set it up. We need to document everything for the courts. Courts? I asked, though I already knew where this was heading. My mother's smile was cold and triumphant. Well, obviously Emma can't stay in such an unstable environment. We'll petition for custody. It's for her own good. Eleanor meticulously arranged the photos like evidence in a court case, each image supposedly proving my moral failings. She held up one particular photo with theatrical disgust. This one was taken last Tuesday at 2 p.m. Sandra entering the Ritz-Carlton when she should have been at her supposed job. The investigator waited. She didn't emerge for 3 hours. What she didn't know was that those 3 hours were spent in a board meeting for my company. The penthouse served as both my home and occasional office space for sensitive negotiations. We need to stage an intervention, Patricia announced, adopting her favorite role as the family moral compass. Sandra, we're doing this because we love you. You need to admit what you've become and get help. The family formed a semicircle around Emma and me like some twisted tribunal. My father stood at the center, arms crossed, playing judge. First, you'll return every penny you stole, he commanded. Then you'll enter a program. They have places for women like you to help you leave that lifestyle. And Emma stays with us during your rehabilitation, my mother added. We've already spoken to James's cousin. He's a family lawyer. James Patricia's husband stepped forward. His eyes traveled over me in a way that made my skin crawl. You know, Sandra, I work with a lot of wealthy men at the dental practice. If you needed money that badly, you could have just asked. I might have been able to arrange something more discreet. The implication in his voice was unmistakable. Patricia either didn't notice or didn't care, too pleased with my downfall to defend her own marriage. You're sick, I said quietly, pulling Emma closer. I'm sick, James laughed. I'm not the one selling my body while my daughter's at school. Marcus pulled out his phone and started recording. This is going to be evidence. Sandra, do you deny visiting the Ritz-Carlton for inappropriate purposes? I don't deny visiting the Ritz-Carlton, I said carefully, but your assumptions about why are completely wrong. Classic deflection, Robert chimed in, just like with the missing money, never a straight answer. They began closing in voices overlapping with accusations and demands. Through the chaos, I heard my cousin Jennifer addressing Emma directly. Sweetie, do men come to your house at night? Does Mommy have special friends who give her presents? Stop it, I snapped, but others joined in the interrogation. Emma, honey, this is important. Aunt Martha knelt beside my daughter. We need to know if you're safe. Does Mommy leave you alone sometimes? Does she tell you to keep secrets? Emma, overwhelmed and confused, just cried harder. Mommy doesn't have secrets. She works hard. She's a good mommy. Of course you think that, dear, Eleanor said patronizingly. Children always protect their parents. That's why we need to act. My father reached into his jacket pocket and produced a business card, thrusting it at me. Gregory Ashford, best family lawyer in the state. He's expecting our call Monday morning to begin custody proceedings. I looked at the card, then at my father's face. The man who taught me to ride a bike, who walked me down the aisle at my wedding, who held Emma for the first time, with tears in his eyes. Now he looked at me like I was a stranger, worse than a stranger, a parasite. You can't be serious, I said, though my voice came out as barely a whisper. Dead serious, he confirmed. You have two choices, Sandra. Voluntarily sign over temporary custody while you get your life together, or we go to court and expose everything. Your theft, your prostitution, your unfitness as a mother. What do you think a judge will decide? Mommy and I are going to live with Grandma and Grandpa, Emma asked through her tears, hope creeping into her voice. In her innocence, she thought this meant more time with family, not understanding she was being taken from me. That's right, sweetheart, Patricia cooed. You'll have your own room, go to a better school, have a real family life. Doesn't that sound nice? But I want to stay with Mommy, Emma said firmly, clinging to me tighter. Children don't always know what's best for them, Eleanor stated coldly. I stood up, lifting Emma with me. We're leaving. This is insane. You're not taking her anywhere. My father moved to block the door. Not until we have an agreement. Move, I said quietly, meeting his eyes. Or what you'll call one of your clients to rough me up, he sneered. Is that how you handle problems now? The rest of the family formed a human barrier between us and the exit. 20 people, all bound by blood, all convinced they were saving my daughter from me. Sign the papers, Sandra, Robert urged. Make this easy on everyone, especially Emma. I'm her mother. I've never neglected her, never harmed her, never done any of the things you're accusing me of, I stated firmly. The evidence says otherwise. Eleanor waved the photos. And we have witnesses. Everyone in this room has seen your erratic behavior, your defensiveness, your inability to provide a stable home. You mean everyone in this room has decided to believe lies without giving me a chance to explain? I countered. Explain then, Thomas roared. Explain the money. Explain the hotels. Explain how you afford anything on a secretary's salary. Einsem. Yensi Nyand, I took a breath, ready to reveal everything, then stopped. Looking at their faces twisted with judgment and false concern, I realized the truth wouldn't matter. They decided who I was long ago, the family failure, the disappointment, the cautionary tale they told their children. My success would only enrage them more. "Please let us pass," I said instead. "Not with Emma. She stays," my mother declared with finality. I held Emma tighter, feeling her small body trembling against mine. The family circle pressed closer, their faces a mixture of self-righteousness and cruel satisfaction. "I'm not signing anything," I stated clearly, "and I'm not leaving my daughter here. Step aside." "You always were stubborn," my father growled, "even as a child. Never knew when to admit you were wrong." "Because I'm not wrong, Dad. You are. All of you are so blinded by your assumptions that you can't see the truth standing right in front of you." Patricia laughed mockingly. "The truth, you mean more lies, more excuses. We have photos, Sandra. We have bank records. We have testimony from Jennifer who saw you at the food bank. What more proof do we need?" "You have circumstantial evidence that you've twisted to fit your narrative," I replied, trying to stay calm for Emma's sake. "Big words for a secretary," Marcus sneered. "Did one of your sugar daddies teach you that?" James stepped uncomfortably close, his breath hot on my face. "You know, Sandra, it's not too late to make a deal. I have connections, influential friends. Maybe we could work something out. Keep this whole ugly business quiet." "James," I snapped, disgusted. "Your wife is standing right there." Patricia seemed unbothered. "He's trying to help you, Sandra. You should be grateful anyone in this family still wants to." "I don't need that kind of help," I said firmly. "No, then what's your plan?" Thomas demanded. "How do you expect to keep Emma when the whole family testifies against you, when we show the court how you've been living—" "When they drug test you," Jennifer added gleefully. "When they investigate your finances," Robert piled on. "When they interview the men at those hotels." Martha contributed. "Stop it, all of you," I shouted, finally losing my composure. "You don't know anything about my life." "We know enough," Eleanor said coldly. "We know you're a 32-year-old single mother who can't keep a man. We know you frequent expensive hotels and restaurants you can't afford. We know money has been disappearing from family accounts. What else is there to know?" Emma whimpered in my arms. "Mommy, I want to go home." "We are going home, baby," I assured her. "No." My father stepped directly in front of me. "You're not." I tried to step around him, but he grabbed my arm. His grip was firm, painful. "Thomas, let go." "Not until you see reason. Sign the papers, Sandra. It's for Emma's own good." "Let go," I repeated, my voice deadly calm. "Or what?" He squeezed harder. "You'll have one of your Johns come after me. Is that how you handle things now? Threats and intimidation?" I wrenched my arm free, but he immediately blocked my path again. The rest of the family closed in tighter, creating an impenetrable wall of bodies. "This is kidnapping," I said. "You can't keep us here against our will." "We're having a family intervention," Aunt Martha corrected primly. "Perfectly legal, especially when a child's welfare is at stake." "My child's welfare is fine." "Is it?" Eleanor challenged. "Living with a mother who sells herself, who steals from family, who teaches her that it's acceptable to lie and cheat your way through life." "I've never taught her any of those things." "Your actions teach her," Patricia preached. "Children learn by example. And what example are you setting?" I tried once more to push past my father. This time he shoved me back, hard. I stumbled, nearly dropping Emma. "Mommy!" Emma cried out in fear. "Careful, Sandra," he warned. "Don't make this physical. You won't win." "You just pushed me." "I stopped you from kidnapping a child who needs protection," he countered. "That's how the court will see it." My mother approached, reaching for Emma. "Come here, sweetheart. Come to Grandma." Emma buried her face in my neck, clinging tighter. "No, I want Mommy." "Don't be difficult, Emma." Eleanor's voice turned sharp. "Good girls listen to their grandparents." She said no. I protected Emma with my body, turning away from Eleanor's grasping hands. "Give her to me," Eleanor demanded, her composure finally cracking. "You're poisoning her, ruining her, just like you ruined yourself. Get away from us." That's when it happened. My refusal, my defiance in the face of their united front, finally pushed my father over the edge. "You ungrateful little whore!" He exploded, his face purple with rage. "After everything we've done, everything we've sacrificed, you steal from us, embarrass us, and now you want to drag Emma down with you." "Dad, please." I tried one last time to reason with him. "Don't call me that," he spat. "No daughter of mine would sell her body. No daughter of mine would steal from her own family. You're nothing to me. Nothing but a disgrace." He grabbed the custody lawyer's card and tried to force it into my hand again. When I refused to take it, he grabbed my wrist, trying to pry my fingers open. "Stop it, you're hurting me," I cried out. "Take the card, Sandra. Take it and do one decent thing in your miserable life." Emma was sobbing now, terrified by the violence. "Stop hurting my mommy, stop it." "See what you're doing to her," Patricia accused. "See how your selfishness affects her." "Sign the papers," multiple voices chanted. "Sign them, sign them." The chaos reached a crescendo. Everyone was shouting, grabbing, pushing. Emma was screaming, and I stood in the center of it all, overwhelmed by the cruelty of people who were supposed to love me. "Enough!" I shouted with every ounce of strength I had. "Get out of my way or I'm calling the police." "You wouldn't dare," Robert challenged. "Not with what we know, not with what we'll tell them." I pulled out my phone with my free hand. "Try me." That's when my mother, refined Eleanor Morrison, who prided herself on never losing control, completely snapped. She struck me across the face with an open palm. The slap echoed through the sudden silence like a gunshot. "You don't deserve to be a mother," she hissed, her face twisted with hatred. "You don't deserve Emma. You don't deserve anything." Emma saw it all. Her innocent eyes witnessed her grandmother strike her mother. The confusion and fear on her face broke my heart into a million pieces. I touched my stinging cheek, tasting blood where my teeth had cut the inside of my mouth. The room was frozen, everyone shocked by the physical violence, but no one moving to condemn it. I looked around the room one final time. These people, my blood relatives, who had just assaulted me in front of my child, who had accused me of unthinkable things, who were trying to steal my daughter based on lies and assumptions. "All right," I said quietly, the single word carrying more weight than any speech could have. I adjusted Emma in my arms and walked toward the door. This time, whether from shock or the realization they'd gone too far, they parted. No one tried to stop me. As we reached the threshold, Patricia couldn't resist one final cruelty. "We've already called Child Protective Services, Sandra. They'll be at your apartment Monday morning." I didn't respond. I just kept walking. Behind us, Marcus was changing the locks, making a show of it so I could hear. "Don't bother coming back," he shouted. "You're no longer welcome here." I buckled Emma into her car seat, my hands shaking but my resolve firm. As I started the engine, my phone began buzzing incessantly. Alert after alert lit up the screen. Bank notifications, security warnings, transaction attempts. My family, in their vindictive rage, were trying to drain every account they thought they had access to. What they didn't know was that their attempts were futile. They were trying to steal from the very person who'd been keeping them afloat. As we drove away from my parents' house for what I knew would be the last time, Emma's small voice broke through my thoughts. "Mommy, why did Grandma hit you?" I met her eyes in the rearview mirror, my cheeks still throbbing from the slap. Sometimes sweetheart people hurt others when they don't understand them, but that doesn't make it right. "Are we going back?" I thought about the trust fund I'd been secretly funding, the mortgages I'd been paying, the lifestyles I'd been supporting while they called me a failure, the elaborate fiction I'd maintained to protect their pride while building my empire in the shadows. "No, baby," I said firmly. "We're not going back." My phone continued to buzz with banking alerts, hundreds of thousands of dollars in attempted withdrawals, all blocked, all traced, all evidence of their greed. They thought they were punishing me by casting me out. They had no idea they'd just set me free. I held Emma's hand as we walked back through my parents' house one final time, the weight of 20 pairs of eyes following our every step. My cheek still stung from my mother's slap, but I kept my expression neutral, refusing to give them the satisfaction of seeing my pain. "That's right, run away," Patricia called out from her perch on the couch, "just like you always do when things get difficult." I paused at the door, looking back at the family I'd spent years supporting without their knowledge. My father stood rigid by the fireplace, his face still purple with rage. My mother nursed her hand, as if striking me had hurt her more. Marcus jingled his keys nervously, already heading toward the door with a toolbox. "All right," I said again, the same quiet word that seemed to infuriate them more than any argument could. "All right, that's all you have to say," Aunt Martha shrieked. "After what you've put this family through." I didn't respond. I simply opened the door and guided Emma through it. "Sandra Morrison, if you walk out that door with that child, you're making the biggest mistake of your life," my father bellowed. Jennifer rushed forward, her phone already in her hand. "I'm calling CPS right now. They have an emergency hotline. I'm reporting an unfit mother fleeing with a child." "Don't forget to mention the drugs," someone else chimed in. "She's probably high right now. Look how calm she is. That's not normal." Emma pressed closer to me as we descended the porch steps. Behind us, the house erupted in chaos again. Through the window, I could see family members scrambling for their phones, their faces twisted with self-righteous fury. "Mommy, why is everyone so angry?" Emma asked as I buckled her into her car seat. "Sometimes people get upset when they don't understand something, sweetheart," I said softly, kissing her forehead. "But we're okay. We're going home now." As I closed her door and walked around to the driver's side, Marcus burst out of the house with his toolbox. "I'm changing these locks right now," he announced to the neighborhood. "You hear me, Sandra? You're no longer welcome in this family. You're done." I got into the car without acknowledging him. Through the rearview mirror, I watched him dramatically removing the front door lock while cousins gathered on the porch to witness the spectacle. My phone began vibrating nonstop as I started the engine. The screen lit up with notification after notification. Bank alerts, security warnings, transaction failures. My family wasn't wasting any time. Chase Bank attempted withdrawal of $75,000 declined. Insufficient permissions. Wells Fargo wire transfer request for $150,000 blocked. Authentication required. Bank of America access attempt from unrecognized device denied. They were trying everything. Every account they thought they had access to. Every emergency fund they believed they controlled. What they didn't realize was that all these accounts were mine, set up through my company to funnel money to them anonymously. As we pulled away from the curb, I saw Patricia run out onto the lawn, shouting something I couldn't hear over the engine. She was waving papers in the air, probably the CPS complaint Jennifer had been threatening to file. "Are we going to see Grandma and Grandpa again?" Emma asked quietly, her voice small and uncertain. I glanced at her in the mirror. Her eyes were red from crying, her small face drawn with confusion and hurt. She'd witnessed her family turn into a mob, seen her grandmother strike her mother, heard accusations no 8-year-old should have to hear. "I don't know, baby," I answered honestly. "Right now, we need to take care of ourselves." Did I do something wrong? My heart shattered. "No, sweetheart, absolutely not. You were perfect. You're always perfect." Then why did they say those mean things? How could I explain adult cruelty to a child? How could I make her understand that sometimes the people who should love you most are the ones who hurt you deepest? "Sometimes grown-ups make mistakes," I said carefully. "Big mistakes. And sometimes they say things that aren't true because they're confused or scared." Were they scared of us? In a way, yes. They were scared of what they didn't understand, scared of my independence, scared of my success, scared that their narrative of me as the family failure might be wrong. My phone continued its relentless buzzing. More transaction attempts, more failures. I could picture them huddled around their computers, frantically trying passwords, calling banks, demanding to speak to managers. A text from Robert popped up. "You've frozen the accounts, haven't you? This proves your guilt. We're adding fraud and cybercrime to the charges." Then Marcus. "Mom's calling her lawyer right now. Kidnapping, theft, elder abuse. You're finished, Sandra." Patricia. "CPS will be at your apartment tonight. Better pack Emma's things. She'll be living with a real family soon." I turned my phone to silent and focused on driving. Emma had found her stuffed rabbit in the back seat and was hugging it tightly, whispering something I couldn't hear. "What are you telling Mr. Bunny?" I asked gently. "I'm telling him not to be scared," she said. "I'm telling him that Mommy will keep us safe." Tears threatened to fall, but I held them back. I had to be strong for her. I'd been strong for so long, building my company while enduring their contempt, funding their lives while accepting their ridicule. I could be strong a little longer. 20 minutes into our drive, Emma spoke again. "Mommy, what's a sugar daddy?" My hands tightened on the steering wheel. "Where did you hear that term, sweetheart?" "Grandma said it. She said you have one. Is it like a candy store?" I took a deep breath. "No, baby. It's a not very nice thing that Grandma said because she was confused. It's an adult word that she shouldn't have used." "Oh." Emma was quiet for a moment. "What about the other word, the one that started with P?" "That's another adult word that was inappropriate," I said firmly. "Grandma and Grandpa said a lot of things today that weren't true and weren't kind. I don't want you to worry about any of it, okay?" "Okay, Mommy." But I could see her in the mirror, still clutching Mr. Bunny, her innocent world shaken by the day's events. My family had stolen something from her today, a piece of her childhood, her trust in the goodness of people who claimed to love her. My phone screen lit up with an incoming call from my head of security, Daniel Reeves. I answered through the car's Bluetooth, making sure to keep the conversation vague for Emma's sake. "Ms. Morrison, we've detected multiple unauthorized access attempts on your accounts." His professional voice filled the car. "I'm aware," I replied simply. "We've blocked all attempts and traced the IPs. Should we pursue legal action?" "Not yet, just maintain security protocols." "Understood. Also, your assistant called. She said there have been inquiries about you at the office. Someone claiming to be your father demanding to speak with HR." Of course. They were already trying to sabotage my job, the one they didn't even know the truth about. "Handle it according to procedure," I instructed. "Yes, ma'am. Anything else?" "Prepare the beach house. Emma and I will be taking a trip." "Right away. Have a safe evening, Ms. Morrison." As we finally turned into our real neighborhood, a gated community my family had never seen, Emma perked up slightly. "Are we really going to the beach house, Mommy? Would you like that?" She nodded enthusiastically. "Can we build sandcastles?" "As many as you want, sweetheart." The security guard at our gate waved us through with a respectful nod. As we wound through the tree-lined streets toward our actual home, I felt the weight of the day settling on my shoulders. In a few hours, I'd gone from daughter and sister to exile and enemy. But looking at Emma, seeing her resilience already starting to surface, I knew I'd made the right choice. They could take their family name. They could take their conditional love. They could take their toxic traditions and poisonous assumptions. What they couldn't take was what I'd built without them. What they couldn't take was my daughter's faith in me. What they couldn't take was our future. As we pulled into the driveway of our real home, a sprawling estate hidden behind carefully maintained privacy hedges, Emma gasped, "Mommy, look, all the lights are on. It looks like a fairy tale." I smiled, the first genuine smile I'd managed all day. That's because it is a fairy tale baby. Our fairy tale. One where we write our own happy ending. My phone buzzed one final time as I parked. A notification from my bank's private wealth division. Multiple failed access attempts detected. All Morrison Enterprise accounts secure. Your family trust automatic deposit for November has been canceled per your remote authorization. Would you like to schedule a meeting with your wealth management team? Tomorrow, I thought. Tomorrow, I would begin the process of untangling the web of financial support I'd woven around my ungrateful family. Tonight, I just wanted to hold my daughter and remind myself why I'd hidden my success for so long. It wasn't shame. It wasn't fear. It was love. Misguided, perhaps, but love nonetheless. Love for people who'd proved tonight they'd never truly loved me back. But that was all right, because the love that mattered, the love between Emma and me, was worth more than all the money in all the banks in the world. "Come on, sweetheart," I said, helping her out of the car. "Let's go home." As we walked hand in hand toward our front door, I didn't look back. There was nothing behind us worth seeing anymore. The moment Emma and I stepped through the front door of our actual home, the weight of pretense fell away. Emma kicked off her shoes and ran through the marble foyer, her sadness temporarily forgotten in the familiar comfort of our space. "Can I watch cartoons in the movie room, Mommy?" she asked, already heading toward the home theater I'd had installed last year. "Of course, sweetheart. I'll bring you some hot chocolate in a few minutes." As her footsteps faded down the hall, I finally allowed myself to breathe. The house's automatic systems had already detected our arrival, adjusting the lighting and temperature to our preferences. This was the life I'd built, the one my family never knew existed. My phone buzzed again. Daniel Reeves was calling from my security center. "Ms. Morrison, I apologize for the continued interruption, but the situation is escalating. We've now logged over 300 access attempts across various accounts." 300. I moved to my home office, a space larger than my parents' entire living room. "Yes, ma'am, they appear to be using multiple devices and IP addresses. We've also intercepted several phone calls to your private banker with someone claiming to be your power of attorney." I sank into my leather chair, pulling up my secured laptop. "Show me everything." The screen filled with data. Transaction attempts, failed logins, phone records. My family was in full panic mode, realizing their golden goose had suddenly stopped laying eggs. "There's more," Daniel continued. "Your brother, Marcus Morrison, has scheduled a meeting tomorrow with 3 venture capital firms. He's presenting himself as a representative of Morrison Enterprises." My blood ran cold. "He's doing what?" "Apparently he's been telling people he's the VP of Business Development for your company. He's even created fraudulent business cards." I pulled up our company's internal communication system. Sure enough, there were external inquiries about Marcus Morrison and his role in the company. "Lock it down," I ordered. "Send cease and desist letters to those VC firms immediately. Have legal prepare fraud charges if he actually attends those meetings." "Already in motion, ma'am. Your legal team was notified the moment we detected the false representation." I switched screens to review our financial systems. Every account my family had ever had access to, every automatic payment I'd set up to support them, every trust fund transfer I'd been making, all of it laid out in pristine digital detail. "Daniel, I need you to implement Project Clean Sweep." There was a pause. "Ma'am, are you certain that will cut off all financial support immediately? No grace period?" "I'm certain. They made their choice tonight." "Understood. Initiating Clean Sweep protocols now." I watched as account after account switched from active to terminated. 5 years of anonymous support ended with a few keystrokes. Mortgages. I'd been paying car loans, I'd been covering credit cards, I'd been funding, all disconnected from my resources. My desk phone rang, showing my private banker's direct line. "Good evening, Harrison," I answered. "Sandra, I apologize for calling so late, but we have a situation. Your father has been calling repeatedly, claiming there's been a security breach on the Morrison family accounts." "There's no breach, Harrison. I'm terminating all automatic transfers to those accounts." "I see." Harrison was too professional to comment on family drama. "Should I expect continued attempts at contact?" "Unfortunately, yes. Please flag all Morrison family members as unauthorized. No information, no access, no exceptions." "Of course. I'll inform my team immediately. Is there anything else you need?" "Actually, yes. I want a full audit of exactly how much I've transferred to them over the past 5 years. Every penny." "I'll have that report ready by morning." As I ended the call, my laptop pinged with new notifications. My assistant Sarah Chen was working late forwarding urgent messages. Marcus Morrison appeared at the office claiming to be your brother. Security turned him away, but he made quite a scene. He told the receptionist that you're mentally unstable and he needs to take over company operations for the family's sake. I rubbed my temples, feeling a headache building. They weren't just trying to access my money anymore. They were trying to destroy everything I'd built. Another message from Sarah. Your mother called the office 16 times in the last hour. She's demanding to speak with your real boss because she doesn't believe you actually work here. Then another. Someone named Patricia left a voicemail saying she's organizing a family intervention at your workplace Monday morning. Should I alert building security? Yes, I typed back. Full lockdown. No Morrison family members allowed in the building. I stood and walked to the window overlooking the city lights. Somewhere out there, my family was probably huddled together, plotting their next move, convinced I was the villain in their story. They had no idea they'd been living in a house I'd paid for, driving cars I'd financed, sending their children to schools I'd funded. My phone rang. The caller ID showed my company's CFO, Michael Tran. Michael, you're working late. Fraud alerts woke me up. Someone's been trying to open lines of credit using Morrison Enterprises as collateral. The applications claim you've authorized your brother as a signatory. Shut it down, all of it. Already done. But Sandra, they're getting sophisticated. They've filed paperwork claiming you're incapacitated and the family needs emergency access to company funds. I almost laughed at the irony. While they'd been accusing me of theft and prostitution, they were attempting actual fraud. How much are they trying to borrow? Collectively about $50 million across various lenders. $50 million. Even I was shocked by their audacity. They seem to think Morrison Enterprises is their family company. I've seen the applications they're claiming generational ownership. Michael, I need you to do something for me. Pull up the incorporation documents, the patent filings, every single piece of paper that proves I built this company alone. Planning something. My family needs a reality check, one they'll never forget. After ending the call, I made myself a cup of tea and checked on Emma. She'd fallen asleep in the movie room, curled up on the plush sofa with Mr. Bunny. I covered her with a blanket and kissed her forehead. My phone buzzed with yet another notification. This time, it was from my wealth management AI, an advanced system I'd had custom built to monitor all my holdings. Alert: Morrison Family Trust balance has reached critical threshold. Current balance $348,116. Automatic closure will initiate in 72 hours per trust guidelines. $342. That's what remained of my grandfather's legacy without my intervention. The trust they'd accused me of stealing from had been empty for years, kept alive only by my secret deposits. I pulled up the deposit history. 5 years of transfers, sometimes weekly, sometimes daily, always anonymous. Always designed to look like investment returns or interest payments. Over $8 million I'd funneled to them, letting them live like royalty while they called me a failure. Another alert: credit card linked to Eleanor Morrison declined at Nordstrom. Transaction amount $3847.92. Then another mortgage payment for Thomas Morrison residence failed. Wells Fargo initiating default notice. And another vehicle loan for Marcus Morrison, 2023 Porsche 911 turbo payment declined. Repossession order generated. The dominoes were starting to fall. My secure phone rang. Rebecca Stone's name appeared on the screen, the forensic accountant my family had hired. Interesting. Ms. Stone, I answered. This is unexpected. Ms. Morrison, I apologize for calling directly, but I've discovered some things your family needs to know. Things about Morrison Enterprises. Have you now? Your family hired me to investigate financial irregularities, but what I've found, Ms. Morrison, are you aware your family has been committing fraud? I'm listening. They've been representing themselves as officers of your company, taking out loans, making promises to investors, claiming assets that aren't theirs. I found evidence going back years. And what do you plan to do with this information? My job is to report the truth. The truth is that you built Morrison Enterprises from nothing. The truth is that the money they accused you of stealing was actually money you were giving them. The truth is... Yes. The truth is they've been stealing from you, not the other way around. I smiled grimly. Thank you for your integrity, Ms. Stone. There's more. Your brother's attempted meeting with those VC firms tomorrow. He's promised them proprietary technology. Your technology. He's planning to sell trade secrets he doesn't even understand. I'll handle it. Ms. Morrison, with your permission, I'd like to present my full findings to your family. They need to know what they've done, what they're about to lose. You have my permission, but Ms. Stone, make sure you have security present. They won't react well. After ending the call, I sat in the quiet of my office surrounded by the evidence of my success. Awards on the walls, patents framed in gold, letters from world leaders thanking me for innovations that had changed industries. All built while my family thought I was struggling. All achieved while they whispered about my failures. Tomorrow would bring chaos. My family would wake to a new reality, one where their superiority complex collided with cold, hard facts. They'd rage and threaten and play victim. But tonight, I had my daughter safe in our home. Tonight, I had the satisfaction of knowing that every cruel word they'd spoken had freed me from the obligation to protect them from themselves. The first strike had been thrown. The family who'd cast me out as worthless was about to discover exactly how much I'd been worth to them. $8 million worth of silence was about to become very, very loud. I woke before dawn, my mind already racing with the day's necessities. Emma was still asleep in the movie room, peaceful and unaware of the storm about to break. I made coffee in my professional-grade kitchen and opened my laptop to assess the overnight damage. The reports were staggering. Harrison, my private banker, had worked through the night with his team. The comprehensive audit lay before me in devastating detail. $8.3 million over 5 years. That's what I'd invisibly poured into my family's lives while they called me a disgrace. The breakdown was meticulous. Thomas Morrison, father, $1.8 million. Mortgage payments, $312,000. Property taxes, $89,000. Credit card debt, $234,000. Country club memberships, $48,000. Luxury car leases, $156,000. Medical expenses, $340,000. Personal loans, $621,000. Eleanor Morrison, mother, $1.6 million. Shopping account, $743,000. Spa treatments, $89,000. Vacation homes, $420,000. Jewelry insurance, $67,000. Personal trainer, nutritionist, $95,000. Charitable donations for social status, $186,000. Marcus Morrison, brother, $2.1 million. Failed startup investments, $1. $2 million. Gambling debts, $380,000. Luxury apartment rent, $144,000. Sports cars, $287,000. Entertainment expenses, $89,000. Patricia Morrison Wells' sister, $1.9 million. Private school for 3 children, $540,000. Nanny services, $195,000. Home renovation, $430,000. Designer clothing accessories, $298,000. Vacation expenses, $347,000. Miscellaneous household, $90,000. Extended family, $900,000. Various emergency loans, medical procedures, education expenses, business bailouts. My phone rang at 6 a.m. sharp. Sarah, my assistant, was already at the office. Good morning, Ms. Morrison. I wanted to update you on overnight developments. Go ahead. Your brother arrived at the building at 4 a.m. with a locksmith claiming he needed emergency access to his office. Security has footage of him trying to break in. Send the footage to legal. Already done. Also, there have been calls from multiple news outlets. Someone leaked a story about Morrison family financial scandal. They're requesting comments. I sighed. Of course my family would try to control the narrative by going public. Standard response. Morrison Enterprises doesn't comment on personal matters. Understood. Oh, and Ms. Morrison, Rebecca Stone, is here. She says you're expecting her. Send her up. 20 minutes later, Rebecca Stone sat across from me in my home office, her expression a mixture of professional composure and personal outrage. "Ms. Morrison, I've been a forensic accountant for 15 years. I've seen embezzlement, fraud, money laundering, even murder-for-hire schemes. But this," she gestured at her tablet full of data, "this is something else entirely. Tell me what you found." "Your family hasn't just been living off your generosity. They've been actively defrauding creditors by using your name. Your father has taken out loans totaling $2.7 million, claiming you as a guarantor. Your mother has opened credit accounts at luxury retailers using your social security number." My stomach turned. Identity theft. Multiple counts. But here's the truly shocking part. They've incorporated a shell company called Morrison Family Enterprises, deliberately similar to your company name. They've been soliciting investments promising returns based on family technology holdings. How much have they raised? $400,000 so far, from 6 elderly investors who thought they were investing in your company. I felt rage building in my chest. Stealing from me was one thing. Defrauding innocent investors was another level of evil. "There's more," Rebecca continued. "Your brother's meeting with those VCs today. He's promised them exclusive rights to your adaptive AI algorithm, the one you just patented. He's asking for $50 million in exchange for technology he doesn't own and doesn't understand. Does he even know what the algorithm does? Based on his emails, he thinks it's a computer thing that makes money. His words, not mine." My secure line rang. Michael Tran, my CFO, sounded unusually grim. "Sandra, we have a problem. 3 board members received calls this morning from someone claiming to be your conservator. This person said you've been declared mentally incompetent and the family is taking over operations." Let me guess. They provided official-looking documents. Forged court orders. Good forgeries, too. If Harriet Chen hadn't been a former prosecutor, she might have believed them. "Emergency board meeting." "Already called. 10 a.m. sharp. All board members are secured and verified. Building is on full lockdown." "I'll be there." After Michael hung up, I turned back to Rebecca. "I need everything you have. Every document, every transaction, every forged signature. Planning to press charges. I'm planning to end this permanently." Rebecca pulled out a secure drive. "Everything's here, including recordings of your family members discussing their plans. Legal obtained them through discovery after your brother's attempted break-in. Recordings. Your father specifically outlining how they'll have you declared incompetent, take over your assets, and restore the family honor. Your mother discussing which mental health facilities have the best reputations for discretion." My hands shook as I took the drive. They weren't just trying to steal money. They were trying to steal my freedom, my sanity, my life. "Ms. Morrison," Rebecca said gently, "I know they're your family, but these are serious crimes. Federal crimes. RICO Act crimes. You could have them all arrested today." "I know." I stood looking out at my city view. "But first, I need to protect my company and my daughter." "What about protecting yourself?" I thought about their cruelty at Thanksgiving. The slap. The accusations. The attempt to take Emma. I've been protecting myself from them my whole life. I'm done hiding. By 7 a.m., I'd made 17 phone calls. FBI contacts, SEC investigators, state attorney generals. Every agency that had jurisdiction over the crimes my family had committed. By 8 a.m., my legal team had filed restraining orders against every Morrison family member. Cease and desist letters were hand-delivered to the VC firms my brother planned to defraud. By 9 a.m., I sat in Morrison Enterprises' boardroom facing 12 of the most powerful business leaders in the country. My board of directors, the people who'd believed in me when my own family hadn't. "Ladies and gentlemen," I began. "I apologize for the drama, but we have a situation." I laid out everything: the family pressure, the false accusations, the attempted corporate takeover, the fraud, the identity theft, the forged documents. Harriet Chen, former prosecutor and current board chair, listened with growing fury. They tried to convince me you were in a psychiatric hold, that I needed to transfer your voting shares immediately for the company's protection. They called me at 3 a.m., added David Park, our lead investor. Said Sandra had been arrested for embezzlement and we needed emergency leadership transition. I got death threats, admitted Jennifer Wu, our newest board member. Anonymous calls saying I'd regret supporting a mentally unstable CEO. The room erupted in outrage. These people had built empires, fought corporate wars, survived assassination attempts. They didn't scare easily, but threatening them to get to me had crossed a line. Motion to authorize unlimited legal resources to protect our CEO and this company, Harriet declared. Seconded came from multiple voices. All in favor. Unanimous ayes filled the room. Furthermore, Harriet continued, I motion to ban all Morrison family members from any association with Morrison Enterprises, its subsidiaries, partners, or affiliates in perpetuity. Another unanimous vote. Sandra. David Park leaned forward. We've known you for 7 years. You've made us all very wealthy. You've revolutionized 3 industries. You've never asked for personal help before. But we're not just your board. We're your allies. What do you need? For the first time since Thanksgiving, I felt tears threaten. I need my daughter safe. I need my company protected. And I need my family to understand that their actions have consequences. Consider it done. Harriet smiled coldly. I still have friends in the Justice Department. Very good friends. The kind who take identity theft and investment fraud very seriously. My phone buzzed. A news alert. The story had broken wide. Tech heiress's family accused of massive fraud scheme. Morrison Enterprises CEO Sandra Morrison, victim of elaborate family conspiracy. $8 million in secret support revealed as relatives attempt corporate takeover. The article included Rebecca Stone's preliminary findings, photos of my brother at our building at 4 a.m., screenshots of fraudulent investment documents, everything. Who leaked this, I asked. Harriet raised her hand slightly. My husband runs the largest media conglomerate in the country. He owed me a favor. Your family wanted to go public. They got their wish. As if on cue, my phone exploded with calls. Patricia, Marcus, my parents, aunts, uncles, cousins, all blocked, all screened, all irrelevant. Ms. Morrison. My head of security appeared on the boardroom screen. Marcus Morrison is in the lobby with 20 people. They're demanding entry. They claim this is a family intervention. Show me. The screen filled with security footage. My brother red-faced and screaming, surrounded by relatives I hadn't seen in years. They held signs. Save Morrison Enterprises from Sandra. Family first. Stop the lies. Behind them, news crews were setting up, drawn by the spectacle. They brought reporters, I observed. Let them, Harriet said. Daniel, please have security inform the trespassers they have 5 minutes to leave before arrest. Make sure the news crews capture everything. We watched as security delivered the message. Marcus's face went from red to purple. He grabbed the security officer, a mistake that immediately resulted in his restraint. That's assault, Jennifer Wu noted, on camera with dozens of witnesses. One by one, my family members were escorted out, some in handcuffs, others simply humiliated. The news crews captured every moment, every threat, every entitled scream about their rightful inheritance. Now, I said, turning back to my board, let's discuss the real reason I called this meeting, Morrison Enterprises' next acquisition. David Park raised an eyebrow. We're making an acquisition today. I smiled for the first time in days. We're buying the Morrison Family Trust's debt portfolio, every mortgage, every loan, every line of credit my family has. Why would we want toxic debt, someone asked. Because, I explained pulling up financial projections, the underlying assets are worth $40 million, the debt is only $12 million, and the current holders are in violation of their loan terms. Understanding dawned on their faces. You're going to foreclose on your own family, Harriet said, not with judgment but with admiration. They wanted me to face consequences for imaginary crimes, I replied. Now they'll face consequences for real ones. The vote was unanimous, again. By noon, Morrison Enterprises owned every debt my family had accumulated, every mortgage, every car loan, every credit line they'd maxed out believing I'd always be there to catch them. The notification started immediately. Notice of default Thomas Morrison primary residence, repossession order, Marcus Morrison vehicle collection, account closure, Eleanor Morrison platinum card, eviction notice Patricia Wells rental property. But I wasn't done. The investigation Rebecca Stone had started was expanding. Federal agents were interviewing the elderly investors my family had defrauded. The IRS was examining years of tax returns where my family had hidden income. The state bar was investigating the lawyer who'd helped them forge documents. My phone rang, an unknown number that somehow made it through my filters. Sandra. My mother's voice no longer imperious but broken. Sandra, please. They've taken everything. The house, the cars, everything. Your father. He's having chest pains. Please, we're your family. No, I said quietly. Family doesn't do what you did. Family doesn't try to destroy each other. We were trying to help you. We thought you were ruining your life. You thought I was a prostitute, a thief, an unfit mother. You tried to take my daughter. You committed crimes in my name. That's not help. That's hatred. Sandra, please, where will we go? I thought about all the times I'd asked myself the same question. Where would I go when Brad left? Where would Emma and I live? How would we survive? I'd found my answers through work, sacrifice, and determination. Things my family had never understood. I don't know, Eleanor, and for the first time in my life, it's not my problem to solve. I hung up as she started sobbing. The corporate takedown was complete. The family who'd tried to steal my company had lost everything instead, but there was no satisfaction in it, only sadness that it had come to this. My assistant knocked and entered. Ms. Morrison Emma is here with the nanny. She's asking for you. I closed my laptop and stood. Send her in. Emma ran into my arms and suddenly none of it mattered. Not the money, not the revenge, not the justice. Only this little girl who still believed in me when no one else had. Mommy, are we still going to the beach house? Yes, sweetheart, we're going today. Can we stay there forever? I thought about the life we could build without toxic family, without judgment, without cruelty masquerading as love. Maybe not forever, I said, but for as long as we need to heal. And that's what this was really about. Not money or power or corporate victories. It was about healing from the wounds inflicted by people who should have protected us. The takedown was complete. Now the healing could begin. The next morning dawned crisp and clear in Hawaii. Emma and I had taken the company jet overnight, leaving the chaos behind. She was still sleeping peacefully in her beachfront bedroom, the sound of waves providing a gentle soundtrack to her dreams. I sat on the lanai with my coffee, watching the sunrise paint the sky in shades of pink and gold, when my phone began buzzing with updates from the mainland. The first message was from Daniel, my security chief. Situation escalating. Morrison family discovering financial reality, documenting all incidents for legal records. Then came the play-by-play I'd been expecting. At precisely 8 a.m. Eastern, Patricia Wells walked into her country club for her regular Monday tennis lesson. She'd changed into her designer tennis outfit and was warming up with her instructor when the club manager approached. Mrs. Wells, I'm afraid there's been an issue with your membership. What kind of issue? Patricia asked, still bouncing the ball casually. Your account has been frozen. The credit card on file was declined and the backup payment method was also rejected. That's impossible. Run it again. The manager's expression was professionally sympathetic but firm. We've tried multiple times. I'm afraid you'll need to settle the outstanding balance of $12,000 before you can continue using club facilities. $12,000 for what? 6 months of dues, restaurant charges, spa services, and pro shop purchases. It's all itemized here. Patricia snatched the paper, her face draining of color as she read. "This is a mistake. My family has been members here for 20 years. I understand and we value that history, but policy requires current accounts. I'll need to ask you to leave the courts." The security footage Daniel sent showed Patricia arguing increasingly desperately, her voice rising until other members started staring. Finally, security had to escort her out, still in her tennis outfit, past a crowd of her society friends. Meanwhile, across town, Marcus was having his own revelation. He'd driven to his office in his Porsche 911 turbo music, blasting ready to close the VC deal that would make him millions. He'd even worn his lucky Armani suit. The repossession agent was waiting in the parking garage. "Mr. Morrison, I need your keys, sir." Who are you?" "Repo Corp Financial. This vehicle is 3 payments behind. We're recovering it for Porsche Financial Services." 3 payments, that's impossible. The payments are automatic." "The automatic payments have been declined for 90 days. You received multiple notices." Marcus had been throwing away the notices, assuming they were mistakes. After all, Sandra always handled things. She always had. "You can't take my car. I have a meeting." "Sir, please step away from the vehicle. Your personal belongings are in this box." The footage showed Marcus trying to prevent the repo actually throwing himself on the hood. Security had to intervene. By the time he was allowed back in the garage, his Porsche was gone. His Rolex, however, caught the attention of another waiting agent. "Mr. Morrison, I'm from Credit Solutions, Inc. We have a judgment for unpaid gambling debts. That watch was listed as collateral." "You can't take my watch." "Sir, you signed the agreement. The watch or $20,000 in cash. Your choice." Marcus had no cash. The watch came off. At the Morrison family home, my parents were facing their own apocalypse. Eleanor had gone to Nordstrom for her weekly shopping trip, a ritual she'd maintained for decades. Her personal shopper had already pulled thousands of dollars worth of items. "I'll take everything, Vivian. Put it on my card." The familiar beep of a declined card shattered her illusion. "Perhaps try another card, Mrs. Morrison." Eleanor produced card after card. Black cards, platinum cards, store cards, all declined, all canceled. The pile of luxury goods sat there mockingly as Eleanor's personal shopper tried to maintain professional composure. "I don't understand," Eleanor whispered, her voice breaking. "There must be $50,000 in available credit between these cards. Would you like me to hold the items while you contact your bank?" Eleanor fled the store, leaving behind not just the merchandise, but 20 years of status and respect. The other shoppers whispered behind manicured hands. By evening, everyone in their social circle would know. Thomas discovered their predicament when the mortgage company called at noon. "Mr. Morrison, this is final notice. Your payment is now 90 days past due. Without immediate payment of $47,000, we'll begin foreclosure proceedings." $47,000. That's 3 months of payments. Why wasn't this paid? "Sir, the automatic payments from your linked account have been declined repeatedly. We've sent numerous notices." Thomas had been throwing them away too, just like Marcus. Why read bills when Sandra handled everything? "This is extortion, I'll sue." "Sir, you're welcome to contact your attorney, but the foreclosure filing will proceed as scheduled." The home they'd lived in for 30 years, where they'd raised their children, where they'd hosted countless family gatherings, where they'd mocked me, was about to be taken away. My phone rang. Rebecca Stone was providing real-time updates. "Your brother just tried to pawn his golf clubs. The pawn shop offered him $300 for $20,000 worth of equipment. He took it." And my parents, "Your father is at the bank screaming at the manager. Your mother is in the parking lot crying in their Mercedes, which, by the way, is scheduled for repossession this afternoon." Patricia posted on social media begging for help. She's claiming identity theft and asking for donations to hire a lawyer. So far, she's raised $17. I felt Emma stir in her room and went to check on her. She was sitting up in bed looking out at the ocean. "Mommy, can we go swimming?" "Of course, sweetheart. Let's have breakfast first." As I made Emma pancakes in our beach house kitchen, my phone continued documenting my family's downfall. Group texts were flying between relatives, each discovering their own financial disasters. Cousin Jennifer, my credit cards aren't working. This is Sandra's fault. Aunt Martha, she canceled the trust fund. We're all ruined. Uncle Robert, I'm calling the FBI. This is financial terrorism. The irony was staggering. They were calling the victim of their crimes a terrorist, while their own fraudulent schemes unraveled. Daniel sent another update. Marcus attempted to enter Morrison Enterprises again, claimed he needed to access his office to get important documents. Arrested for trespassing, currently in city holding. Then another. Patricia's husband James has filed for divorce. His attorney contacted our legal team, wants to ensure his client isn't implicated in the Morrison family fraud. Even the rats were fleeing the sinking ship. By 2 p.m. Hawaii time, 5 p.m., Eastern, the family group chat had devolved into pure chaos. Thomas, emergency family meeting, my house now. Patricia, what house they're foreclosing? Eleanor, has anyone heard from Sandra? Maybe if we apologize. Marcus from jail, don't apologize, sue her, this is illegal. Robert, the trust fund is empty. How is it empty? Martha, we're all going to be homeless. I watched their panic with a strange detachment. These people who'd stood in judgment of me, who'd tried to steal my daughter, who'd committed actual crimes while accusing me of imaginary ones, were finally facing consequences. Emma came out dressed in her swimsuit, bright and happy. Ready, Mommy. Almost sweetheart. One final message from Rebecca Stone. Family meeting happening now. Your father just admitted on recorded video that they've been living off your deposits for years. He called you the golden goose and said they needed to get you back under control. Your mother suggested having you committed to access your power of attorney. I turned off my phone and took Emma's hand. Now I'm ready. We spent the afternoon building sandcastles and searching for seashells. Emma's laughter carried on the wind, pure and joyful. She didn't need to know that back on the mainland, her grandparents were packing their belongings into boxes. Her uncle was calling a public defender. Her aunt was begging friends for couch space. Mommy, Emma said as we watched the sunset, are you sad about Grandma and Grandpa? I considered lying, but Emma deserved honesty. A little bit, sweetheart. I'm sad they made bad choices. Like when they were mean to us. Yes, like that. Maybe they'll learn to be nicer. Maybe, I said, though I doubted it. That evening, I finally turned my phone back on to find hundreds of messages. Pleas for forgiveness, threats of lawsuits, promises to change, demands for money, the full spectrum of human desperation. But one message stood out from a number I didn't recognize. Ms. Morrison, my name is Grace Chen. Your mother was my housekeeper for one day. She showed up at my door begging for work, offering to clean houses for cash. I hired her out of pity. She spent the entire time crying and talking about her ungrateful daughter who ruined her life. I Googled you. Thank you for inventing the medical device that saved my mother's life last year. I thought you should know what your family is saying about you. You deserve better. I saved that message. A reminder that while my family saw me as a failure and an ATM, strangers saw the truth of what I'd built and who I'd become. Emma was already asleep, exhausted from sun and surf. I tucked her in and kissed her forehead, then returned to the lanai to watch the stars appear over the Pacific. My family was in full panic. Their house of cards collapsed, their delusions shattered. They'd learned they couldn't survive without the daughter they'd rejected. But I'd learned something too. I could survive without them, more than survive. I could thrive. The panic was theirs to endure. The peace was mine to enjoy. Tomorrow would bring more chaos, more desperate attempts to drag me back into their dysfunction. But tonight, I had the ocean breeze, the sound of waves, and the knowledge that I'd finally stopped enabling the people who'd never truly loved me. Their panic had set in. My freedom had begun. 3 days into our Hawaiian retreat, the mainland chaos reached a crescendo. I'd maintained radio silence with my family, but stayed in constant contact with my legal and security teams. Emma and I had developed a routine of morning beach walks, afternoon swimming, and evening movies. She seemed lighter, happier, free from the toxic atmosphere we'd left behind. That morning, as Emma built an elaborate sandcastle, my phone rang with a call from Harrison, my private banker. "Sandra, I thought you should know. The forensic accountant your family hired is requesting a meeting. She says it's urgent." Rebecca Stone. "Yes, she's uncovered something significant. She's refusing to share it with your family until she speaks with you." "Set it up, video call in 1 hour." I made sure Emma was happily occupied with her nanny, then retreated to the house's private office. Rebecca Stone appeared on screen, her expression grave. "Ms. Morrison, thank you for taking my call. I need to present my complete findings, and I believe you should hear them first." "I appreciate your professionalism, Rebecca. What I've found goes beyond simple fraud." She shared her screen displaying a complex web of financial transactions. "Your family has been operating multiple schemes for years, all built on the assumption that you'd always bail them out." The data was staggering. Shell companies, fake charities, investment schemes targeting elderly church members, tax evasion dating back a decade. Your brother Marcus alone has defrauded investors of over $4 million, promising them access to Morrison Enterprises technology. Your father has been selling memberships to a non-existent business club, collecting fees for exclusive networking opportunities. With you. How many victims? 47 that I've identified so far, mostly retirees who trusted the Morrison name. My stomach turned. It was worse than I'd imagined. "There's more," Rebecca continued. "Your mother has been running an illegal tax shelter, helping wealthy friends hide assets in exchange for kickbacks. She's been using your Social Security number to establish credibility. Identity theft on top of tax fraud. Multiple federal crimes. The FBI will be very interested." Rebecca paused. "But the most disturbing discovery involves your sister, Patricia." "What did she do?" "She's been collecting money for a fake charity, Emma's Future Fund. She told donors it was for your daughter's education because you couldn't afford it. She's raised over $200,000. I felt rage build in my chest. Using my daughter's name for fraud was beyond forgivable. "I've documented everything," Rebecca said. "The question is, what do you want me to do with it?" "Your job, report it all." "To your family?" "To everyone, the FBI, the IRS, the SEC, local prosecutors. Let them all know exactly who the Morrison family really is." Rebecca nodded. "I'll file my report today. Your family won't be happy." "They haven't been happy since they realized the money was gone. This won't change anything." After the call, I contacted my head of security. "Daniel, I need you to increase protection on Emma and me. My family is about to get some very bad news." "Understood. I should also mention the media attention is intensifying. 3 major networks want interviews." "No interviews, not yet." I returned to the beach to find Emma had recruited 2 other children to help with her sandcastle empire. She was directing them with the same quiet confidence I'd tried to instill in her. "Mommy, look, I'm the queen of the Sand Kingdom." "You certainly are, sweetheart." My phone buzzed with news alerts. The story had evolved from family drama to criminal investigation. Morrison family fraud ring exposed. Tech CEO's relatives face federal charges. Elderly investors seek justice in Morrison scheme. Then came the family messages, predictably explosive. "Marcus, still from jail. You set us up entrapment, my lawyer will destroy you." "Patricia, how could you do this to your own sister? Emma's Future Fund was for your daughter." "Eleanor, the FBI is at my door. Sandra, call them off. Call them off now." "Thomas, you've destroyed our name, our reputation. 40 years of standing in this community gone." I didn't respond. There was nothing to say. That afternoon, a call came from an unexpected source, Agent Sarah Williams from the FBI's White Collar Crime Division. Ms. Morrison, I want to assure you that you're not under investigation. In fact, you appear to be the primary victim here. I appreciate that clarification. We've been building a case against your family for months, actually. Your report just accelerated things. We need your cooperation. You have it. We'll need you to testify about the pattern of abuse, the financial exploitation, the identity theft. I'll testify. Your family won't go quietly. They're already claiming you orchestrated everything to steal their rightful inheritance. I almost laughed. What inheritance? I built everything myself. That's what the evidence shows, but they're telling a different story to anyone who'll listen. Emma ran up from the beach, dripping wet and grinning. Mommy, I saw a sea turtle. That's wonderful, sweetheart. Agent Williams, I need to go. Send me whatever you need. We'll be in touch. That evening, the local news in Hawaii picked up the story. Emma and I were eating dinner when my face appeared on the restaurant's TV. Tech mogul Sandra Morrison, creator of life-saving medical devices and revolutionary AI systems, has been revealed as the victim of an elaborate family fraud scheme. I quickly distracted Emma with dessert options, but damage was done. Other diners were staring, whispering. Mommy, why are you on TV? It's just a story about Mommy's work, sweetheart. Oh, can I have chocolate cake? The simplicity of childhood. Chocolate cake mattered more than federal investigations. We returned to our beach house to find Daniel had arrived from the mainland with 2 additional security personnel. Ms. Morrison, we've intercepted some concerning communications. Your brother has been released on bail and is making threats. Your parents have hired a PR firm to paint you as mentally unstable. They're planning a media blitz. Let them. The truth speaks louder than their lies. There's something else. Rebecca Stone received a death threat, anonymous, but traced to your cousin Jennifer's IP address. Increase her security, whatever it costs. Already done. That night after Emma was asleep, I sat on the beach under the stars. My phone rang with a call from my board chair, Harriet Chen. Sandra, the board, wanted me to convey our unanimous support. We've also authorized a $50 million legal fund to protect you and the company. $50 million. Your family picked the wrong enemy. We protect our own. Thank you, Harriet. Don't thank me yet. This is going to get uglier before it gets better. Your brother is shopping a tell-all book deal. Your mother's on social media claiming you've been planning this since childhood. Your father's given 3 interviews calling you a sociopath. They can say whatever they want. The evidence speaks for itself. Indeed it does. Oh, and Sandra, that medical device you invented? My grandson needed it last month. It saved his life. So this is personal for me. After the call, I walked along the waterline, letting the waves wash over my feet. Every action my family took proved why I'd been right to cut them off. Every lie they told revealed their true nature. My phone buzzed with one final message of the day. From Emma's tablet, a video message she'd recorded without my knowledge. Hi, Mommy. I know you're sad about Grandma and Grandpa, but I want you to know you're the best mommy in the whole world. You take care of me and work hard and build things that help people. I love you so much. Also, can we get a dog? I laughed through my tears. In the midst of federal investigations and family warfare, my daughter's love remained pure and simple. The investigation would continue. Charges would be filed. Trials would come. My family would rage and threaten and play victim until the very end. But none of it mattered as much as that video message. None of it compared to the trust in Emma's eyes. None of it outweighed the peace I'd found by finally standing up to the people who'd torn me down my entire life. Let them investigate. Let them discover every crime, every lie, every betrayal. I had the ocean. I had my daughter. I had the life I'd built despite them. And that was more than enough. The call came at dawn Hawaiian time. Rebecca Stone's voice was steady but tinged with exhaustion. Ms. Morrison, I'm about to present my findings to your family. Given the death threat and the escalating situation, I'll be doing it via secured video conference from the FBI field office. Agents will be present. Are you sure you want to do this? It's my job. Besides, they hired me to find the truth. They're going to get it. I made Emma breakfast while monitoring the situation on my laptop. My family had assembled in a conference room at their lawyer's office, confident they were about to receive vindication. They had no idea what was coming. At exactly 9 a.m. Eastern, Rebecca began her presentation. My security team had arranged for me to watch the feed. Good morning. I was hired to investigate financial irregularities in the Morrison family accounts, specifically suspected theft by Sandra Morrison. After extensive analysis, I've prepared my report. The family leaned forward eagerly. Patricia actually smiled, anticipating proof of my guilt. Finding number 1. Rebecca began clicking to her first slide. Sandra Morrison is the founder, sole owner, and CEO of Morrison Enterprises, a technology company valued at approximately $400 million. The room went silent. That's impossible, my father sputtered. She's a secretary. No, Mr. Morrison. Here are the incorporation documents filed 7 years ago. Patent applications, board meeting minutes, Forbes articles. Your daughter built an empire while you weren't paying attention. She clicked to the next slide. Finding number 2. The Morrison Family Trust, which you accuse Sandra of stealing from, has been insolvent for 5 years. It's been kept afloat by anonymous deposits totaling $8.3 million. Anonymous, Eleanor whispered. The deposits came from accounts linked to Morrison Enterprises. Sandra has been funding your entire lifestyle since her company became profitable. Marcus shot to his feet. You're lying. This is fabricated. Sit down, Mr. Morrison. Rebecca's voice was ice. I have copies of every transaction, every deposit, every transfer. Your sister didn't steal from you. She's been supporting you. But the withdrawals, Robert protested weakly, were her deposits being automatically distributed to family members. She designed it to look like trust fund proceeds so you wouldn't know. Patricia's face had gone white. Why would she hide it? Rebecca looked directly at the camera. I suspect that's a question only Sandra can answer, but I can tell you what else I found. The slides continued, each more damning than the last. Marcus's fraudulent investment schemes, Patricia's fake charity, Eleanor's tax shelters, Thomas's business club scam. In total, the Morrison family has defrauded innocent investors of approximately $6.7 million over the past 4 years, Rebecca stated. These are federal crimes. You can't prove any of this, Thomas blustered, but his voice shook. Actually, I can, and I have. Mr. Morrison, you've been selling exclusive access to your daughter's company. Here are the receipts, emails, recorded phone calls. She played a recording of Thomas's voice. My daughter runs Morrison Enterprises. For $50,000, I can guarantee you a meeting. She does whatever I tell her. Mrs. Morrison. Rebecca continued, turning to Eleanor. You've been filing fraudulent tax returns using your daughter's Social Security number. That's identity theft and tax evasion. Eleanor's carefully composed facade cracked. I want a lawyer. You have one. He's sitting right next to you. Though I should mention, Mr. Ashford, that you're also implicated. You notarized several fraudulent documents. The family lawyer went pale. Patricia Morrison Wells. Rebecca moved on relentlessly. Emma's future fund. You collected donations claiming Sandra couldn't afford her daughter's education. Where did that money go? Patricia's mouth opened and closed soundlessly. Vacations, designer goods, plastic surgery, all documented here. And Marcus Morrison. Rebecca's tone turned even colder. You've been presenting yourself as an executive at Morrison Enterprises, promising investors access to proprietary technology. That's securities fraud. I am an executive. It's the family company. No, sir, it's Sandra's company. You have no position, no authority, no relationship with Morrison Enterprises whatsoever. You're a con artist. The room erupted in shouting. Blame flew in every direction. The lawyer tried to restore order while simultaneously edging toward the door. Rebecca raised her voice over the chaos. There's one more thing you all should know. The FBI has been investigating you for months. They're not investigating Sandra. They're investigating all of you." "This is Sandra's doing," Thomas roared. "She set us up." "No, Mr. Morrison. You set yourselves up the moment you decided to commit crimes. Sandra's only action was to stop funding your criminal enterprises." "We're her family," Eleanor shrieked. "She owes us." Rebecca's expression hardened. "Actually, let's discuss what you owe her. Beyond the $8.3 million she gave you, there's the matter of attempted kidnapping." What multiple voices shouted? "Thanksgiving evening. You physically prevented Sandra and her daughter from leaving. You threatened to take Emma. You assaulted Sandra. That's false imprisonment, attempted kidnapping, and battery." "We were trying to help her. By calling her a prostitute, by hitting her, by threatening her child. I've seen the security footage from the street. Your neighbors have doorbell cameras." The family fell silent, realizing the extent of evidence against them. "My recommendation," Rebecca concluded, "is that each of you hire criminal defense attorneys immediately. The FBI will be arresting several of you within the week. Securities fraud tax, evasion, identity theft, elder abuse. These carry serious federal sentences." "You're supposed to be working for us," Robert accused. "I was hired to find the truth. I found it. Sandra Morrison is a self-made millionaire who secretly supported her ungrateful family for years. You are criminals who bit the hand that fed you." She closed her laptop. "My full report has been submitted to the FBI, IRS, SEC, and state authorities. Good luck. You'll need it." The feed cut off, leaving the family in stunned silence. Within minutes, my phone exploded with messages, but I didn't read them. Instead, I took Emma to see the dolphins keeping her innocent world intact while her relative's criminal empire crumbled. That afternoon, Daniel called with updates. "The media has the story. Rebecca Stone gave an exclusive interview. She didn't hold back." I pulled up the video on my tablet. Rebecca, composed and professional, sat across from a major news anchor. "What surprised you most about this investigation?" the anchor asked. "The ingratitude," Rebecca replied without hesitation. "Sandra Morrison invented medical devices that have saved thousands of lives. She built a company that employs hundreds of people. She secretly gave her family millions, and they thanked her by calling her a failure trying to steal her child and committing crimes in her name. The family claims this is all a misunderstanding. The family is wrong. I have 70,000 documents that prove otherwise. They're not victims. They're criminals who got caught." "What do you think motivated Sandra Morrison to hide her success?" Rebecca considered the question. "Love. Misguided, perhaps, but love. She knew they'd treat her differently if they knew about her wealth. She was right. The moment they discovered it, they tried to steal it." The interview went viral within hours. Public opinion, already sympathetic to me, turned venomous toward my family. Their social media accounts were flooded with outrage. That evening, as Emma and I watched the sunset, my phone rang with a call from the federal prosecutor assigned to the case. "Ms. Morrison, I want to prepare you. We'll be filing charges tomorrow. Your father and brother for securities fraud. Your mother for tax evasion and identity theft. Your sister for charity fraud. Various relatives for related crimes." "I understand. The arrests will be public. Media will be present. Are you prepared for that?" I looked at Emma building sand angels in the fading light. "I'm prepared. Just keep my daughter's name out of it." "We'll do our best. Your testimony will be crucial." "You'll have it." After the call, I sat with the weight of what was coming. My family would be arrested. Perp walks, mugshots, trial, prison. The 7-year-old who'd idolized her father might have been destroyed by this. The 17-year-old who'd sought her mother's approval might have crumbled. The 27-year-old who'd hidden her first success might have felt guilty. But the 32-year-old woman who'd built an empire while being called worthless, she felt only resolve. Mommy. Emma appeared at my side, sandy and smiling. "Are you okay?" "I'm perfect, sweetheart." "Good, because I made you something." She handed me a shell she'd painted with nail polish. It's a magic shell. When you hold it, you can hear the ocean say, "I love you." I held it to my ear, pretending to listen. "You're right, I can hear it." "That's because it's true," she said simply, then ran back to her sand creations. I held that painted shell and realized that everything I'd built, every success I'd achieved, paled compared to raising this remarkable little girl. My family had tried to take her from me, the one thing more valuable than any company or fortune. Tomorrow, the truth would be fully unveiled. Arrests would be made. The Morrison family name would be forever linked to fraud and betrayal. But tonight, I had a magic shell that whispered love, a daughter who believed in me, and the ocean breeze carrying away the last of my obligations to people who'd never deserved my loyalty. The truth had been unveiled. Now justice would follow. The arrests happened at dawn Eastern Time. I watched the news from our beach house as FBI agents led my family members from their homes in handcuffs. The media had been tipped off cameras catching every humiliating moment. Thomas Morrison, once the proud patriarch, shuffled out in rumpled clothes, trying to shield his face. Eleanor, always perfectly presented, looked haggard without her usual makeup and styled hair. Marcus shouted about conspiracies as agents guided him into the vehicle. Patricia wept dramatically, playing victim, even as she was arrested for victimizing others. Emma was still sleeping, spared from seeing her grandparents on every news channel. I made coffee and stepped onto the lanai to find dozens of missed calls and messages. The first voicemail was from Thomas, recorded moments before his arrest. "Sandra, sweetheart, there's been a terrible misunderstanding. Call me immediately. We can work this out as a family." Then Eleanor, her voice breaking, "How could you do this to us, your own parents? We gave you life, we raised you. This is how you repay us." Marcus had left 17 messages, each more unhinged than the last. Patricia's husband, James, had sent a formal text distancing himself from the Morrison criminal enterprise and asking that I remember he was always kind to me. By noon, Hawaii time, the family financial desperation had reached new heights. With their assets frozen and bail set high, they were scrambling. Eleanor called from Federal Holding. I let it go to voicemail. "Sandra, I'm your mother. Whatever problems we've had, I'm still your mother. They're saying I could get 20 years. 20 years, I'll die in prison. Is that what you want, for your mother to die behind bars?" Then Thomas. "Princess, remember when I taught you to ride your bike? Remember Christmas mornings? Remember how I walked you down the aisle? I'm your daddy. Please don't let them do this to me." The manipulations were transparent, invoking memories of a childhood that had been more nightmare than nostalgia. They'd forgotten that I remembered the whole truth, not just the moments they wanted to highlight. Patricia's call was different, angry rather than pleading. "Emma's gonna grow up knowing you destroyed her family. She'll hate you for this. When she's older and understands what you've done, she'll see you for the monster you are." That one stung, not because it was true, but because Patricia would use my daughter as a weapon, even from a jail cell. My lawyer Harrison called with updates. "They're trying to liquidate everything for bail money. The problem is you own all their debts. They literally have nothing left to sell." "What are they asking for?" "Your father's lawyer has requested a meeting. Your mother's attorney wants to discuss a plea deal that involves your cooperation. Your brother is demanding you pay for his defense. Your sister," he paused, "your sister is offering to testify against the others in exchange for leniency." "Of course she is." "What should I tell them?" "Tell them to speak with the prosecutor. I'm not funding their defense or interfering with justice." That afternoon, the calls intensified. Extended family members who'd been caught in the net began reaching out. "Uncle Robert, Sandra. I had no idea what they were doing. I'm innocent in all this. Surely you can speak on my behalf." "Aunt Martha, sweetheart, I've always been good to you. Remember when you stayed with us that summer? Please, I'm 70 years old. I can't go to prison." "Cousin Jennifer, this is insanity. We're family. You don't send family to prison." Each call followed the same pattern: shock that consequences existed, attempts to rewrite history, demands disguised as requests, threats wrapped in guilt. Emma and I spent the day at a secluded beach building elaborate sand sculptures. She was designing a castle with multiple towers, focused and happy. Mommy do castles have doors that lock. Some do, sweetheart, to keep the people inside safe. Good, our castle needs strong locks. Even she understood the need for boundaries. That evening, a call came through from an unexpected source, my grandfather's estate attorney, William Hartley. Ms. Morrison, I've been following the situation. I think you should know something about your grandfather's will. What about it? He left a sealed letter with instructions to deliver it only if certain conditions were met. Those conditions appear to have been satisfied. What conditions? If the family ever turned against you, if they ever tried to harm you or take what was yours. He seemed to anticipate this possibility. My heart clenched. Grandfather had died when I was 25, just as I was starting Morrison Enterprises. He'd been the only family member who'd believed in me. Send the letter, I managed. It'll be delivered tomorrow by courier, and Ms. Morrison, your grandfather would be proud of what you've built. That night, unable to sleep, I walked the beach under the stars. My phone rang with a number I recognized. Dr. Patricia Summers, my freshman year college roommate, now a psychiatrist. Sandra, I'm so sorry about everything you're going through. I wanted you to know your mother called me. What? She wanted me to write a letter stating you've always been unstable, that you showed signs of mental illness in college. She offered me $50,000. Patricia, I told her to go to hell. Then I called the FBI about witness tampering. But Sandra, you need to know they're building an insanity defense. They're going to claim you manipulated them while mentally ill. Let them try. The evidence speaks for itself. I know. I just wanted you to be prepared. They're desperate enough to destroy you completely if it saves them. After we hung up, I sat on the beach processing the depth of their betrayal. Even facing prison, they were still trying to paint me as the villain. My phone buzzed with a text from my assistant, Sarah. Your mother's attorney is holding a press conference tomorrow. Claims they have bombshell evidence about your mental state. Then another from Daniel. Intercepted communications suggest they're planning character assassination campaign. Several relatives have been contacted by tabloid journalists offering money for dirt. The desperation was evolving into something darker. They couldn't accept responsibility, so they'd try to destroy me instead. Emma appeared beside me, rubbing sleepy eyes. Mommy, why are you out here? Just thinking, sweetheart, why are you awake? Bad dream. The castle fell down. I pulled her into my lap. Sometimes castles do fall down, but you know what? We can always build new ones, stronger ones. With better locks, with the best locks. She snuggled against me, and I held her close, this precious girl they'd tried to take from me. Let them have their press conferences and character assassinations. Let them exhaust themselves with desperate schemes. I had what mattered. The rest was just noise. The next morning, Grandfather's letter arrived by special courier. Emma was at her swimming lesson with the nanny giving me privacy to read it. His handwriting, shaky with age but still distinctive, brought tears to my eyes. My dearest Sandra, if you're reading this, then my worst fears have come true. Your family has revealed their true nature, and you've had to stand alone against them. I've watched you since you were small, different from the others. Where they saw opportunity for exploitation, you saw chances to help. Where they built walls, you built bridges. They never understood you, and I fear they never will. I know about your company. Yes, even then I knew you were building something special. I also knew you'd hide it from them, too kind to make them feel small, too generous to let them suffer. But kindness without boundaries becomes enablement. Generosity without wisdom becomes waste. They will take until you have nothing left, then blame you for the emptiness. Stand strong, my brilliant girl. You owe them nothing. You've given them more than they deserved. When they come with tears and pleas and promises to change, remember Maya Angelou said, when people show you who they are, believe them the first time. They've shown you who they are, believe them. All my love and faith, grandfather. P.S. Check Swiss account number 447-891-2345. Consider it my investment in your freedom from them. I sat crying on the lanai, clutching the letter. Even from beyond death, grandfather was still protecting me, still believing in me. My phone rang. Harrison's voice was excited. Sandra, the Swiss account your grandfather referenced. It's been sitting dormant for 15 years, accumulating interest. Current balance is $12.7 million. He knew, I whispered. He knew this day would come. There's more. The account documents include a note. It says, for Sandra alone. Let her choose kindness or freedom. Both are valid. Neither is wrong. I looked out at the ocean, grandfather's words echoing in my mind. Kindness or freedom. For so long, I'd chosen kindness, funding their lives while accepting their contempt. Now I chose freedom. That afternoon, Eleanor's press conference aired. She stood outside the jail on bail, somehow looking fragile and grandmotherly. Her attorney spoke first. The Morrison family are victims of a calculated campaign of revenge by a mentally unstable individual. We have evidence of Sandra Morrison's long history of delusions, manipulations, and pathological lying. Eleanor stepped to the microphone, tears already flowing. I don't know what we did to deserve this. We've only ever loved Sandra despite her challenges. Even when she was selling herself to strange men, we tried to help. Even when she was stealing from us, we protected her, and this is how she repays our love. The lies were so audacious, I almost admired them. She played the grieving mother perfectly, painting me as an ungrateful monster who destroyed innocent lives. We're establishing a legal defense fund, the attorney continued. The Morrison Family Justice Fund, because sometimes even families need protection from their own. My phone exploded with calls from reporters wanting my response. I ignored them all. Emma returned from swimming, chattering about the fish she'd seen. We made lunch together, her carefully spreading peanut butter while I handled the jelly. Mommy, are we going home soon? Do you want to? She thought about it. Maybe. But I like it here. It's peaceful. From the mouths of babes, it was peaceful. For the first time in my life, I had peace. That evening, the news covered the family's various bail hearings. Marcus had somehow convinced a bondsman to cover him. Patricia's husband had paid hers, probably to keep her from dragging him down further. Only Thomas remained in custody, unable to meet the $1 million bail. The pleas continued, now public as well as private. Marcus gave interviews claiming I'd stolen his ideas for Morrison Enterprises. Patricia started a blog about surviving familial narcissistic abuse. Eleanor became a fixture on morning shows, the sympathetic mother betrayed by her disturbed daughter. But the evidence was overwhelming. For every lie they told Rebecca Stone had a document proving the truth. For every accusation they made, the FBI had recordings of their actual crimes. Their desperation was public, now played out on social media and cable news. The court of public opinion was split, some believing their performance, others seeing through it. I didn't care. I had grandfather's letter, Emma's laughter, and the sound of waves washing away their poison. Let them plead. Let them perform. Let them exhaust themselves, tilting at windmills of their own construction. I was done being their audience. 6 months passed in a blur of legal proceedings, media coverage, and blessed distance. Emma and I had returned to the mainland, but kept our lives carefully separate from the ongoing drama. She was thriving in her new school, making friends, excelling in her classes. I'd returned to running Morrison Enterprises, pushing forward with innovations that would help millions while my family dragged our name through the mud. The trials had been spectacular disasters for them. One by one, their lies unraveled under oath. Thomas had taken the stand in his own defense, confident he could charm the jury as he'd charmed investors. Instead, prosecutors played recording after recording of him promising access to my company. Taking money for influence, he didn't have threatening elderly victims who asked for refunds. His sentence, 15 years for wire fraud, securities fraud, and racketeering. Eleanor's trial revealed the depth of her tax schemes. She'd helped dozens of wealthy friends hide millions in offshore accounts, all while using my Social Security number to establish credibility. When confronted with evidence, she'd broken down on the stand, sobbing about how she'd only wanted the best for her family. 10 years for tax evasion and identity theft. Marcus had tried to flee before his trial, violating bail and adding years to his eventual sentence. Caught at the Canadian border with a fake ID and stolen cash, he'd fought extradition for weeks. His trial exposed not just fraud, but threats against witnesses, attempted blackmail, and a cocaine addiction that explained his increasingly erratic behavior. 20 years. Patricia had turned state's evidence, testifying against the others in exchange for a lighter sentence. Her testimony was devastating, revealing family meetings where they'd planned their schemes, discussions about having me committed to access my assets, jokes about how stupid I was to keep giving them money. She got 5 years and supervised release. But the trials were just the beginning of the meltdown. Without my funding, without their schemes, without each other to lean on, the Morrison family began consuming itself. I watched from a distance as the collapse accelerated. Security cameras at the family home, now in foreclosure, captured Marcus, breaking in to steal copper piping to sell. Patricia, released pending appeal, was caught on video attacking Eleanor in the courthouse parking lot, screaming about betrayal. Thomas from prison sent letters to every family member, blaming them for his downfall. My phone rang one evening as I was reviewing quarterly reports. Rebecca Stone, who'd become something of a friend through this ordeal, sounded both amused and appalled. "Sandra, you need to see this. Your family is literally fighting on live television." I pulled up the feed. A daytime talk show had somehow convinced Eleanor and Patricia to appear together. What started as their attempt to gain public sympathy had devolved into a screaming match. "You threw us all under the bus," Eleanor shrieked at her daughter. "You threw me under the bus first, telling everyone I was the mastermind when it was all your idea." "Ladies, please." The host tried to intervene, but they kept going. "You stole from Emma's fund. You stole Sandra's identity. At least I didn't try to have her committed." "No, you just tried to steal her daughter." The audience watched in shocked fascination as mother and daughter revealed crime after crime, each trying to prove the other was worse. By the end, they'd inadvertently confessed to felonies their trials hadn't even covered. "The prosecutors are thrilled," Rebecca told me. "They're adding charges based on this interview." Extended family members, trying to distance themselves from the radioactive Morrison name, began their own civil war. Uncle Robert sued Aunt Martha for defamation after she blamed him for introducing the family to their first fraud victim. Cousins picked sides, creating Facebook groups dedicated to exposing each other's crimes. Jennifer, my cousin, who'd been particularly cruel at Thanksgiving, posted a tell-all video admitting she'd lied about seeing me at the food bank. "Sandra was never there getting food. I made it up because Patricia paid me $500 to support their story. I'm sorry, Sandra. You were the only good one among us." But apologies from complicit relatives meant nothing now. The financial implosion was complete. The family home sold at auction for a fraction of its value. Luxury cars were repossessed and auctioned. Designer goods were liquidated by the FBI to pay restitution to victims. The Morrison family trust, the source of their identity and pride, was formally dissolved, with its final balance of $342 donated to charity. Emma thankfully remained largely unaware of the spectacle. I'd hired a child psychologist to help her process the loss of her extended family, and she was doing remarkably well. "Do you miss them?" Dr. Chen asked during one session I observed. "Sometimes," Emma admitted, "but they were mean to Mommy, and they tried to take me away. That's not what family does." "What does family do?" "Family loves you even when you make mistakes. Family helps you be better. Family doesn't lie or steal or hit." Wisdom beyond her years, forged in the fire of betrayal. The media coverage shifted as public opinion solidified against my family. What had started as family feud over fortune became the Morrisons' anatomy of American greed. Documentary makers circled true crime podcasters, dissected every detail psychology experts analyzed their narcissistic collapse on cable news. Then came the ultimate irony. Hollywood wanted to buy the rights to the story. Harrison called with the offer. Lifetime, Netflix, and HBO are bidding. Current highest offer is $15 million for exclusive rights. Give it to charity, I said without hesitation. Set up a fund for victims of family fraud. Let something good come from their greed. But the family meltdown wasn't done. From prison, Thomas had been orchestrating one last scheme. Using a contraband phone, he'd been calling distant relatives, claiming I'd hidden millions in offshore accounts that rightfully belonged to the Morrison legacy. If we work together, he promised in recorded calls, we can still get what's ours. Sandra can't fight all of us. What he didn't know was that every call was monitored, every scheme reported, every threat documented. His attempts to organize a family uprising from behind bars added years to his sentence. Marcus, in his own facility, had started a prison blog claiming he was a political prisoner, jailed for exposing corporate corruption. His posts grew increasingly deranged, mixing conspiracy theories with threats against judges, prosecutors, and me. Eventually, his communication privileges were revoked entirely. Eleanor, in minimum security, tried to maintain her dignity by teaching etiquette classes to other inmates. The irony of a convicted fraudster teaching manners wasn't lost on anyone. She sent me weekly letters alternating between begging for money and condemning me to hell. Patricia's situation was perhaps the most pathetic. Released to house arrest, she lived in a tiny apartment abandoned by her husband, estranged from her children who'd chosen their father's stable home over her chaos. She started a podcast called Surviving Sandra that no one listened to. Each episode grew more bitter, more detached from reality, until even the hosting platform removed it for violating terms of service. One evening, Emma and I were baking cookies when my phone rang with a call from my board chair, Harriet Chen. Sandra, I thought you should know. Your mother gave an interview to a prison documentary crew. It airs tomorrow. Our media team has seen an advance copy. How bad? She claims you've been planning this since childhood, that you deliberately built your company to destroy the family. She's also suggesting you murdered your grandfather for inheritance money. Grandfather died of a heart attack. He was 93. Facts haven't stopped them before. We're prepared with a response if needed. No response. Let her hang herself with her own rope. The documentary aired to spectacular ratings and universal condemnation of Eleanor. Her wild accusations delivered with theatrical tears were so obviously false that even former supporters turned against her. Fact-checkers had a field day. Legal experts discussed additional charges for defamation. But the final blow to the Morrison family came from an unexpected source. My grandfather's estate attorney, William Hartley, reached out again. Ms. Morrison, I've been contacted by the Department of Justice. They're invoking asset forfeiture laws against your family members. Meaning, any assets purchased with fraudulent gains can be seized. Going back 20 years. They're estimating your family benefited from over $30 million in criminal proceeds over 2 decades. $30 million. Your support was just the latest chapter. They've been running schemes since before you were born. The investigation has uncovered frauds dating back to your grandfather's generation. The revelation recontextualized everything. I hadn't been supporting a struggling family. I'd been funding a criminal enterprise that existed long before I came along. There's something else, Hartley continued. Your grandfather's personal papers include documentation of why he excluded your parents from his will originally. He knew what they were. He tried to protect you. And I undid his protection by giving them money. You gave them love. That's never wrong, even when it's undeserved. As the asset forfeiture proceeded, the family meltdown reached its crescendo. Properties I didn't even know existed were seized. Bank accounts in countries I'd never visited were frozen. Art jewelry and collectibles purchased with stolen money were cataloged and confiscated. The extended family began releasing tell-all books, each blaming the others, each revealing new crimes, each more desperate for relevance and revenue than the last. They appeared on increasingly trashy talk shows, physically fighting, revealing affairs, exposing blackmail schemes that had nothing to do with me, but everything to do with their rotten core. Emma and I watched none of it. We were too busy living our lives, building our future, surrounded by chosen family who actually knew what love meant. The Morrison family had melted down completely, consuming itself in an orgy of blame, betrayal, and bitterness. They'd become a cautionary tale, a dark fable about greed and consequences. But we weren't part of their story anymore. We were writing our own. 2 years had passed since that fateful Thanksgiving. Morrison Enterprises had gone public in a spectacular IPO, making me one of the youngest female billionaires in tech. Emma, now 10, was flourishing in 5th grade, her confidence and kindness intact despite everything we'd endured. We'd moved to a new estate with better security, but kept our lives remarkably normal, focusing on what mattered each other, our work, and our community. The call came on a gray Tuesday morning. Harrison, my attorney, sounded unusually subdued. "Sandra, your mother is being released next week, compassionate release. She's been diagnosed with stage 3 breast cancer." I set down my coffee cup carefully, emotions I'd thought long buried stirring in my chest. "How long does she have?" "The prison doctors estimate 6 months to a year with treatment. She's requesting to see you." "No." "I told her you'd say that. But Sandra, there's more. Your father had a stroke in prison. He's partially paralyzed. Your brother was attacked by other inmates who discovered he'd been stealing from elderly people. He's in protective custody but psychologically broken. Patricia is homeless." "Harrison, these people tried to destroy me. They tried to take my daughter. They committed crimes in my name." "I know, I'm just conveying information. What you do with it is your choice." After the call, I sat in my office staring at the wall of patents and awards. Success hadn't erased the pain of their betrayal, but it had given me perspective. They were broken people who'd broken themselves further, trying to break me. That evening, Emma found me on the terrace, lost in thought. "Mom, you look sad." I pulled her close. "Just thinking about complicated things, sweetheart." "Is it about Grandma and Grandpa?" I'd always been honest with her in age-appropriate ways. "Yes, Grandma is sick. She wants to see us." Emma considered this seriously. "Do you want to see her?" "I don't know." "Maybe we should think about what's the kind thing to do. You always say being kind is important even when it's hard." My brilliant, compassionate daughter, teaching me lessons I'd taught her. The next morning, Eleanor called from a borrowed phone. Her voice was weak, raspy, nothing like the imperious tone I remembered. "Sandra, thank you for taking my call." "What do you want, Eleanor?" I wanted to hear your voice and to say," a long pause, "to say I'm sorry." "You're sorry because you're dying. That's not real remorse." "No." Her voice cracked. "I'm sorry because I was a terrible mother. I'm sorry because I let jealousy and greed poison everything. I'm sorry because I realized lying in that cell that you were the only good thing our family ever produced, and we tried to destroy you for it." I said nothing, letting silence carry the weight of years. "I don't expect forgiveness," she continued. "I don't deserve it. I just wanted you to know that I finally understand. You weren't the family failure. You were the only success, and we hated you for showing us what we could have been if we'd chosen differently." "What do you want from me, Eleanor?" "Nothing. I have nothing left to take, and you have nothing left to give. I wanted to tell you that your grandfather would be proud. I found his letters in storage, the ones he wrote about you. He saw who you really were when the rest of us were blind." After she hung up, I sat with the conversation, parsing real emotion from potential manipulation. My instincts, honed by years of their schemes, searched for the angle, the trap, the hidden agenda. But what if there wasn't one? What if facing death had finally brought clarity? Over the following days, more attempts at redemption trickled in. Patricia sent a handwritten letter, pages of rambling apology mixed with updates on her dire circumstances. She was living in a shelter, working minimum wage, her children refusing contact. "I testified against everyone to save myself," she wrote, "and lost everything anyway. You were right to cut us off. We were parasites. I see that now." Marcus, through his court-appointed therapist, requested a video call. Against my better judgment, I accepted. He appeared on screen, gaunt, hollow-eyed, missing teeth from the prison attack. The arrogant brother who'd mocked my secretary job was gone, replaced by a broken man who flinched at sudden movements. "Sandra." He began, then stopped, seeming to forget what he'd planned to say. They told me I have to make amends, part of therapy." "Is that why you called, because they told you to?" "No. Yes. Both." He rubbed his face with shaking hands. "I called because I dream about Thanksgiving. Every night. I see you walking out with Emma, and I change the locks and I laugh, and then I wake up in this cell and realize I locked myself in, not you, out." "Marcus, I'm not asking for money. I'm not asking for help. I just needed to tell you that you were right about everything. The company, the success you hid, the way you carried us. We should have been proud. We should have celebrated you. Instead, we tried to tear you down because your success made our failures obvious. Why should I believe you're sincere?" He laughed bitterly. "Because I have nothing left to gain. No schemes, no angles, no hope. Just truth. You want to know something funny? My cellmate has a daughter who uses the medical device you invented. He talks about you like you're a hero, and I have to listen knowing you're my sister, knowing what we did to you. That's my real punishment." The call ended with Marcus in tears, whether genuine or performed, I couldn't tell. Thomas's attempt came through his lawyer, a thick envelope containing a 12-page letter written in shaky handwriting with his non-paralyzed hand. "My dearest Sandra," it began. "They say pride goeth before a fall. I fell from pride into paralysis, from schemes into silence. I have months, maybe years, to sit with what I've done." The letter detailed every cruel word, every manipulation, every moment he'd chosen, greed over love. He remembered things I'd forgotten, small cruelties that had shaped my childhood. He acknowledged the damage, the pain, the theft of not just money, but trust, safety, and family. "I don't write seeking forgiveness," he continued. "I write seeking witness. Someone should acknowledge what was done to you. Someone should say it was wrong, all of it. Every moment we made you feel small, every time we called you failure, every second of that Thanksgiving. You deserved better. Emma deserved better." He ended with a memory I'd buried. "When you were 7, you gave your allowance to a homeless man. I scolded you for wasting money. You said, 'But Daddy, he was hungry.' I should have praised your compassion. Instead, I tried to kill it. Thank God I failed. Each attempt at redemption forced me to examine my own heart. The anger was still there, but it had evolved into something more complex. Not forgiveness exactly, but understanding. They were products of generational dysfunction, repeating patterns they'd learned, teaching greed as gospel. Dr. Chen, Emma's therapist, who'd become my own, helped me process the complicated emotions. "They're facing their mortality," she observed. "Prison, poverty, illness. These have a way of stripping away delusions. The question isn't whether their remorse is real. The question is, what response aligns with your values? My values include protecting my daughter. Of course, but Emma is watching how you handle this. She's learning about justice, mercy, and boundaries. What lesson do you want her to learn?" That night, I talked with Emma about forgiveness, about boundaries, about the complexity of human nature. "So they're sorry now?" she asked. "They say they are. But they weren't sorry when they were being mean." "No, sometimes people only understand their mistakes when they face consequences. Like when I had to apologize to Lucy after I excluded her from my birthday party." "Similar, yes." Emma thought for a while. I think I think you can forgive someone but still not invite them to your party. Does that make sense? Perfect sense from the mouth of my wise child. I made my decision the next week. Through Harrison, I established the Morrison Family Rehabilitation Fund, not for my family, but for other families torn apart by financial crimes. It would provide counseling, legal aid, and support for both perpetrators seeking genuine redemption and victims seeking healing. For my family, I offered something more limited but still significant. I would pay for Eleanor's cancer treatment at the best facility available. I would ensure Thomas had proper medical care in prison. I would fund Marcus's therapy and psychiatric medication. I would provide Patricia with a security deposit for an apartment and 3 months of living expenses. Not because they deserved it, but because I could. Not because I forgave them, but because compassion didn't require forgiveness. The conditions were strict. No direct contact with Emma or me, no public statements about our family, no attempts to profit from their connection to me. Any violation would result in immediate termination of support. Eleanor's response came through her doctor. She'd broken down crying when told about the treatment funding. Tell her I'll honor every condition. Tell her thank you. Tell her I understand this is grace, not forgiveness. Thomas's lawyer reported similar gratitude mixed with shame. Marcus's therapist said it was the first time Marcus had shown genuine emotion rather than manipulation. Patricia sent a single text, "I'll prove worthy of this chance." Whether they would or not remained to be seen. People could change, but patterns ran deep. Trust once shattered could never be fully rebuilt. But that wasn't the point. The point was choosing who I wanted to be in response to who they had been. The point was teaching Emma that strength included mercy, that boundaries could coexist with compassion, that you could wish someone well from a distance. The media painted it as forgiveness, but it wasn't. It was something more complex and ultimately more powerful. It was choosing to break the cycle, to refuse to let their cruelty define my choices, to build something better from the ashes of what they'd burned. Emma and I visited grandfather's grave that weekend, laying fresh flowers on the marble stone. "He would be proud of you," Emma said solemnly. "Why do you think so?" "Because you're being kind even when it's hard. He liked that about you. He wrote it in his letter, remember?" I did remember grandfather's faith in my kindness even when he warned against its excess. He'd understand this choice, this balance between self-protection and compassion. As we walked back through the cemetery, Emma slipped her hand into mine. "Mom, I'm proud of you too." "For helping them?" "No, for helping them without letting them hurt us again. That's really hard, but you did it anyway." My 10-year-old daughter understanding nuances that had taken me 34 years to grasp. The redemption attempt was real whether their remorse was or not. But it was my redemption I was crafting, not theirs. The redemption of choosing grace while maintaining boundaries. The redemption of breaking generational patterns. The redemption of teaching my daughter that you could be kind without being a victim, generous without being foolish, compassionate without being conquered. They'd attempted redemption in their broken way. I'd offered what I could while protecting what mattered. And that perhaps was the best any of us could do with the families we're given and the futures we choose to build. 6 months after establishing the Rehabilitation Fund and providing limited support to my family, I agreed to one final video conference. The prosecutors, having secured all necessary convictions, were closing their files. The civil suits were settled. The media had moved on to newer scandals. It seemed like the right time to provide closure, not for them, but for Emma and me. The conference was coordinated through official channels monitored by legal representatives, recorded for posterity. 4 screens appeared on my monitor: Eleanor from her hospice room, Thomas from the prison medical ward, Marcus from the psychiatric facility where he'd been transferred, and Patricia from her small apartment. They looked like strangers. Eleanor, bald from chemotherapy, had lost her imperious bearing. Thomas, partially paralyzed, struggled to sit upright. Marcus's medicated calm replaced his manic energy. Patricia seemed diminished, her designer clothes replaced by thrift store finds. "Thank you for agreeing to this," Eleanor began, her voice barely above a whisper. "We have 20 minutes, I stated clearly. "This is not a reconciliation. This is closure." "We understand," Thomas slurred through his partial paralysis. "We just wanted to see you, to say things that need saying." "Then say them." Marcus cleared his throat. "I've been in therapy, real therapy, not the court-mandated kind. I learned about narcissistic family systems, golden children and scapegoats, generational trauma. I was the golden child who could do no wrong. You were the scapegoat who could do no right, until you succeeded despite us." "Your point?" "My point is that I see it now. The sickness we inherited and passed on. Patricia and I, we competed for approval by joining in their cruelty toward you. We thought tearing you down would lift us up. Instead, it destroyed us all." Patricia nodded, tears streaming down her face. "My therapist says I projected all my insecurities onto you. Every time you succeeded, it highlighted my failures. So I tried to make you smaller, to make myself feel bigger. I turned my children against their aunt, taught them to mock you. Now they want nothing to do with me, and I understand why." Eleanor's turn came with visible effort. "I was jealous. From the moment you were born, different, special in ways I couldn't understand. Your grandfather saw it. He loved you the way he never loved me. I spent 40 years punishing you for being what I couldn't be." "And you, Thomas," I prompted when my father remained silent. He struggled, whether with words or paralysis, unclear. "I wanted a son to carry on the Morrison name in business. When Marcus showed no aptitude, I pinned those hopes on him anyway. When you showed brilliance, I ignored it because you were a girl. My pride, my stupid pride, cost me the greatest gift I'd ever been given. A daughter who could have made the Morrison name mean something good." "Is that all?" "No," Thomas continued with effort. "That Thanksgiving when I threw you out, when your mother hit you when we tried to take Emma. That was the moment I lost my soul. I've replayed it every night in this hospital bed. The look in your eyes, the dignity in your voice when you said, 'All right,' the quiet way you protected Emma while we attacked. You were more of an adult that day than I've ever been." I absorbed their words, searching for manipulation but finding mostly exhaustion and defeat. They'd spent their ammunition, burned their bridges, exhausted their schemes. What remained was the stark truth of wasted lives. "I hear your words," I finally responded. "I acknowledge your apologies, but I need you to understand something. Apologies don't erase actions. Understanding doesn't undo damage. Your recognition of these patterns doesn't heal the wounds you inflicted." "We know," Eleanor whispered. Do you understand that while you were calling me a failure, I was saving lives with my inventions? While you were accusing me of prostitution, I was building a company that employs thousands. While you were trying to steal from me, I was anonymously funding your entire existence." They flinched collectively, the truth still sharp despite repetition. "But here's what you really need to understand," I continued. "I didn't succeed despite you. I succeeded because of you. Your cruelty taught me resilience. Your greed taught me generosity. Your lies taught me the value of truth. Every cruel word became fuel. Every betrayal became a lesson. Every attempt to break me only revealed how unbreakable I was. So, in the most twisted way possible, I should thank you. You showed me exactly who I never wanted to be. You demonstrated every value I should reject. You provided the perfect fan mian jiao kai of how not to raise my daughter." Emma appeared in the doorway of my office, having just returned from school. I motioned for her to wait. "Is that—" Patricia gasped. "Is that Emma?" "That's my daughter, the one you tried to steal, the one you used for fraud, the one you traumatized with your cruelty." Emma stepped into view, tall for her age, confident in her bearing. "Hello," she said simply. My family stared at her like she was a ghost. The baby they'd dismissed had become a poised young woman who looked at them without fear or hatred, just calm assessment. "Emma," Eleanor breathed, "you've grown so beautiful." "Thank you," Emma replied politely. "Mom says I look like great-grandfather." The mention of the grandfather who disinherited them stung visibly. Emma wanted to say something. I explained. I told her she didn't have to, but she insisted. Emma straightened her shoulders. "I remember Thanksgiving. I was 8, not a baby. I remember everything you said about my mom. I remember Grandma hitting her. I remember Uncle Marcus laughing. I remember Aunt Patricia saying Mom was unfit." They shrank under her steady gaze. "But mostly," Emma continued, "I remember my mom walking out with dignity while you screamed and threatened. I remember her building an empire while you tried to tear her down. I remember her choosing to help you even after everything you did. That's why she's my hero and you're just people I used to know." The silence was deafening. Eleanor began to sob. Thomas tried to speak, but no words came. Marcus stared at his hands. Patricia covered her face. "We're done here," I announced. "The fund will continue to pay for your medical needs and basic support. The conditions remain unchanged. No contact, no public statements, no profiting from our connection. Live your lives such as they are. Find whatever peace you can, but do it away from us." "Sandra, wait," Thomas managed. "Just one thing. The company you built, the lives you've saved, the example you've set for Emma, none of that came from us. That was all you. You were never our daughter. You were always your grandfather's granddaughter, his brilliance, his kindness, his vision. We were just the people you had to survive to become who you were meant to be." It was perhaps the truest thing he'd ever said. "Goodbye," I said, simply ending the call. Emma and I sat in silence for a moment before she spoke. "Are you okay, Mom?" "Yes, sweetheart. Are you—" "I think so. They looked very sad." "They are sad. They're living with the consequences of their choices." "Will we ever see them again?" "I don't think so. Sometimes loving people from a distance is the best we can do." Emma nodded, wise beyond her years. "Like how we love the ocean but don't live in it because we'd drown." Exactly like that. That evening, we held our monthly dinner for the Morrison Foundation Scholarship recipients, young women pursuing STEM careers despite family opposition. As I watched Emma interact with these brilliant, determined students, I saw the future we were building. One recipient, Maria, pulled me aside. "Ms. Morrison, I wanted to thank you. When my family disowned me for choosing engineering over marriage, your scholarship saved my life. But more than the money, your story gave me hope. If you could build Morrison Enterprises while your family tried to destroy you, I can build my dreams too." "That's the point," I told her. "Breaking cycles, choosing different, building better." Later, as Emma and I reviewed applications for the next round of scholarships, she asked, "Mom, do you think they'll change? Really change?" I considered the question carefully. People can change, but patterns are powerful. They're sick, scared, and facing their mortality. That brings clarity, but it doesn't erase a lifetime of choices. They might become better versions of themselves, or they might simply become quieter versions. Either way, it's their journey now, not ours. "I hope they find peace," Emma said softly. "Not for them, but so they stop hurting other people." My compassionate daughter, hoping for redemption even for those who'd wronged her. The measured response was complete. I'd given what I could afford to give materially and emotionally. I'd protected what needed protecting. I'd modeled for Emma how to be generous without being foolish kind, without being conquered. My family would live or die, change or stagnate, find peace or remain tormented, and none of it would touch us. We'd built walls of appropriate height bridges, of appropriate length boundaries, of appropriate strength. They'd received more than they deserved, but less than they wanted, which was perhaps the perfect summary of our relationship. The sun set over the Pacific as Emma and I worked side by side planning futures for young women who reminded me of myself at their age, desperate to build something better than what they'd been given. "Mom," Emma asked as the stars began to appear, "I'm proud of how you handled that." "Why?" "Because you were fair without being weak, strong without being cruel. You showed them grace without giving them power. That's really hard. How did you get so wise?" She grinned, looking so much like my grandfather it took my breath away. I had a good teacher. We returned to our applications to our life, to our chosen family of employees and friends and scholarship recipients who understood that family wasn't about blood but about choice. Who knew that success wasn't about money but about impact? Who believed that the best revenge against those who tried to diminish you was to become too bright to look at directly? The measured response was over. The unlimited future stretched ahead. And we stepped into it together unencumbered and unafraid. 2 years had passed since that final video call. Morrison Enterprises had become a Fortune 500 company, our innovations in medical technology and AI saving lives globally. Emma, now 12, had grown into a remarkable young woman, confident, kind, and brilliant in her own right. We'd built a life filled with purpose, joy, and chosen family who celebrated our victories and supported our challenges. It was Thanksgiving again, but this one couldn't have been more different from that terrible night 4 years ago. Our estate buzzed with warm energy as guests arrived. The scholarship recipients we'd supported now, successful engineers, doctors, and entrepreneurs, came with their own families. Employees who'd become friends brought dishes from their cultural traditions. The board members who'd stood by me during the family crisis arrived with their children who'd become Emma's extended cousin network. "Mom, Maria's here," Emma called out, running to greet the aerospace engineer who'd become her mentor. "She brought her new boyfriend to meet us." I smiled, watching Emma excitedly drag Maria to see her latest robotics project. This was what family looked like: bonds forged by choice, strengthened by mutual respect, sustained by genuine love. Harrison, my lawyer, who'd become a trusted friend, arrived with his partner and their adopted twins. "Sandra, the place looks magnificent." "It should." Emma designed the entire table setting. She's been planning for weeks. The dining room showcased Emma's eye for design, each place setting, personalized with a small gift reflecting the guests' interests or achievements. She'd insisted on round tables instead of one long one, so everyone can talk to everyone, and placed conversation starter cards at each setting to spark meaningful discussions. Daniel, my security chief, had become part of our extended family after years of protecting us. He arrived with his daughter, who Emma had been tutoring in math. Rebecca Stone came with her wife and new baby, living proof that professional relationships could evolve into real friendships. As people mingled, sharing updates on their lives and achievements, I stood back observing. 4 years ago, I'd walked out of my parents' house with nothing but Emma and our dignity. Now our home overflowed with people who genuinely cared about us, who saw us for who we really were, who loved us without conditions or expectations. "Aunt Sandra," a voice called out. It was Michael, the 10-year-old son of one of our scholarship recipients. He'd started calling me Aunt after his mother graduated, and it stuck. "Can you help me with my science project? Mom says you're the best at explaining quantum computing." After dinner, I promised ruffling his hair. "But I want to hear your ideas first." This was the family we'd built. Children who saw me as a resource, not a bank. Adults who valued my expertise, not my wallet. Relationships based on mutual growth, not manipulation. Dr. Chen arrived with her family, having transitioned from Emma's therapist to family friend. "Sandra, I have something for you." She handed me an envelope. "It's from one of your fund recipients. She wanted me to deliver it personally." I opened the letter, written in shaky handwriting. "Dear Ms. Morrison, my name is Agnes Chen, no relation to Dr. Chen. I'm 78 years old. Your father convinced me to invest my life savings in his fake business club. I lost everything and had to move in with my daughter. When the FBI recovered some funds and your rehabilitation program helped me rebuild, I thought that was miracle enough. But you did more. You hired my granddaughter as an intern at Morrison Enterprises. You probably don't even know with so many employees, but she's flourishing. She talks about you like you're a superhero. I wanted you to know that your kindness rippled further than you might realize. My whole family has been transformed by your choice to build instead of destroy. Thank you for showing us that success and compassion can coexist. With gratitude and love, Agnes. I wiped away tears as Emma appeared at my side. Good letter. The best kind, I said, showing her. She read it, her face lighting up. That's Jenny Chen. She works in my after-school robotics program. I didn't know her grandmother was one of Grandpa's victims. The connections were everywhere, weaving a tapestry of redemption and growth from the threads of old pain. Harriet Chen. My board chair called everyone to attention. Before we sit down to feast, I want to share something. 4 years ago, I watched Sandra face a crisis that would have destroyed most people. Her family's betrayal, their crimes, their attempts to steal everything she'd built. Any of us would have been justified in seeking revenge. The room grew quiet, everyone knowing the story but respecting its weight. Instead, Harriet continued, she chose to build. The Morrison Foundation has supported 300 young women in STEM. The Rehabilitation Fund has helped 50 families recover from financial fraud. Morrison Enterprises has created technologies that have saved over 100,000 lives, all while raising this remarkable young woman. She gestured to Emma, who blushed but stood tall. So today I want to propose a toast, not just to success or survival, but to the choice to transform pain into purpose, to Sandra and Emma, who showed us that the best response to those who try to tear you down is to build something so beautiful they become irrelevant footnotes in your story. To Sandra and Emma, the room chorused, glasses raising. As we settled at our tables, Emma stood up. I want to say something too. The room gave her their attention, these successful adults respecting the 12-year-old who'd survived her own trials. 4 years ago, my family tried to take me away from my mom because they thought she wasn't good enough. They were wrong. My mom didn't just prove she was good enough, she proved that good enough was too small a goal. She taught me to aim for extraordinary, not to prove anything to anyone, but because we're capable of it. She looked directly at me. Mom, you turned our worst day into the beginning of our best life. You showed me that family isn't about blood, it's about choice. And looking around this room, I see the family we chose, and who chose us back. That's worth more than all the money in all the banks in the world. There wasn't a dry eye in the room. Also, Emma added with perfect 12-year-old timing, I'm thankful for pie. Can we eat now? Laughter filled the space as we began our feast. Conversations flowed across tables, mixing languages, generations, and experiences. Children played between courses. Business partnerships formed over dessert. Mentorships sparked during coffee. As the evening progressed, I found myself in the kitchen with several women loading the dishwasher and sharing stories. Maria mentioned she was considering starting her own aerospace company. Another scholarship recipient was launching a nonprofit. Rebecca Stone was writing a book about financial fraud recovery. You know what amazes me? Dr. Chen said, drying dishes. How you've all turned trauma into fuel. Every woman in this room has a story of family betrayal or societal obstacles. But instead of becoming bitter, you became builders. We had a good example, Maria said, nodding toward me. We had each other, I corrected. That's the difference. We chose to link arms instead of stepping on each other. Later, as the evening wound down, Emma and I stood on the terrace overlooking the ocean. Guests still mingled inside. Children had built a fort in the playroom. Teenagers discussed college plans in the library. This is perfect, Mom, Emma said, leaning against me. It really is. Do you ever think about them, the other family? I considered the question. Eleanor had passed 6 months ago, her cancer winning despite treatment. Patricia had sent a single text, "She's gone. Thought you should know." I'd felt sadness, but not the sharp grief of losing a mother. That had happened years earlier. Thomas remained in prison, his health declining. Marcus had been transferred to a long-term psychiatric facility. Patricia worked at a grocery store, living quietly, her social media presence erased. The extended family had scattered the Morrison name, so tainted that many had legally changed theirs. Sometimes, I admitted, but not with anger anymore, just with distance, like remembering a movie I saw once that didn't end well. "I'm glad we got our happy ending," Emma said. "This isn't an ending, sweetheart. This is a beginning. Every day we get to choose who we invite into our lives, what we build, how we love. The ending only comes when we stop choosing. Then let's never stop choosing good things. Deal." As if summoned by our conversation, my phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. I almost ignored it, then saw it was from the prison communication system. "Sandra, this is Marcus. I know I'm not supposed to contact you, but I'm being released tomorrow. Early release for good behavior and overcrowding. I have nowhere to go, no one to call. I'm not asking for money or help. I just wanted someone to know I exist, that I'm trying. I won't contact you again. I hope your Thanksgiving was everything ours never were. Marcus." I showed Emma the message. "Well, what will you do?" she asked. "Nothing," I said, deleting it. "He made his choices. Now he lives with them. But I hope he finds his way." That's sad. It is, but some stories don't get happy endings. That's why we have to cherish the ones that do. We returned to our guests, to our chosen family, to the life we'd built from the ashes of what others had tried to burn. The scholarship recipients were planning a collaborative project. The board members were organizing a charity gala. The children were performing an impromptu talent show. This was wealth. This was success. This was family. As the last guests prepared to leave, each taking home containers of leftovers, Emma had insisted on preparing. Our home felt fuller despite emptying. Love lingered in every corner. Laughter echoed in every room. Hope permeated every surface. Best Thanksgiving ever. I asked Emma as we surveyed the happy chaos. "Best everything ever," she confirmed. "But Mom, next year, can we do this on a different day? I want to start a new tradition. Our own holiday that isn't connected to old memories." My brilliant daughter, always thinking ahead, always choosing to build rather than simply rebuild. "What should we call it?" Gratitude Day, Family Choice Day, Beginning Day. Let's think about it together. We have a whole year to decide. A whole lifetime. Emma corrected, then paused. "Mom, I have a confession. I've been writing about our story, for my English class, but also for me. Is that okay?" "Of course, your story to tell too. I'm calling it How to Build a Family. Want to read it?" I'd be honored. As we cleaned up together, Emma chattering about her writing project, I reflected on the journey. 4 years ago, I'd lost a family that never truly existed. In exchange, I'd gained a life beyond my wildest dreams. Morrison Enterprises would continue growing, saving lives, changing industries. The foundations would expand, supporting more women, helping more victims. Emma would forge her own path, whatever that looked like, with the confidence of someone truly loved and supported. And somewhere out there, the people who'd tried to destroy us were living with their choices. I hoped they'd found peace or purpose, or at least survival. But their story was no longer intertwined with ours. Our story was here in this house, filled with chosen love in the companies we'd build, in the lives we'd touch, in the future we'd create together. The beginning was beautiful. The middle had been harrowing. But the best part, we were still writing it one choice at a time, one day at a time, one love at a time. "Mom," Emma called from the kitchen. "Want to help me plan next year's menu? I'm thinking international fusion to represent everyone's heritage." I laughed, joining my daughter in planning our future celebrations, because that's what you do when you've survived the worst and built the best. You keep building, you keep choosing, you keep loving, and you never ever look back. The doorbell rang on an ordinary Tuesday evening. Emma was at robotics club and I was reviewing contracts in my home office. The security system showed a delivery person with a small package. I signed for it, noting the return address was from a law firm in Switzerland. Inside was a letter and a small key. Dear Ms. Morrison, per instructions left by your grandfather, this final bequest was to be delivered exactly 7 years after the initial inheritance, but only if you had chosen freedom over enabling. Congratulations on meeting his conditions. The attached key opens safety deposit box 447-891-23462 at Credit Suisse in Zurich. Your grandfather wanted you to know the money was never the inheritance. The wisdom to know when to stop giving it was. With regards the estate of William Morrison, I held the key this final message from beyond the grave. Grandfather had known. He'd planned for this betting I'd eventually choose myself over them. Later that evening, I video called the bank in Zurich. The safety deposit box contained no money, no gold, no stocks. Instead, there were letters, dozens of them, all addressed to me dated across the years when grandfather was alive, but I was too young to understand. I read them with Emma that night, both of us crying and laughing as grandfather's words painted a picture of his own journey, from enabler to boundary setter, from family financier to freedom fighter. The final letter, dated just before his death, ended with, My dearest Sandra, if you're reading this, then you've learned the hardest lesson love has to teach. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is stop. Stop giving. Stop enabling. Stop sacrificing yourself for people who see you as a resource rather than a soul. I failed with your parents. I gave until they expected it helped, until they demanded it loved, until they felt entitled to it. By the time I realized my error, it was too late. They were who they'd become, users rather than lovers. But you, my brilliant girl, you have the chance I missed. The chance to choose differently, to love with boundaries, to give with wisdom, to build your own family based on mutual respect rather than blood obligation. The real inheritance was never money. It was the freedom to choose. Choose wisely. Choose boldly. Choose yourself. All my love and faith, grandfather. P.S. Use the attached account for something that brings you joy. You've earned it. The attached account information revealed a small fund just enough for something special, but not life-changing. Grandfather's final lesson, joy didn't require millions, just intention. Emma suggested we use it to take our chosen family on a retreat, somewhere beautiful where we can all be together, where we can plan more good things. And so we did. The following month, our entire Thanksgiving crew spent a week in Hawaii, not in luxury, but in love. We built sandcastles and dreams, shared stories and strategies, created bonds that blood could never break. On the last night, as we sat around a beach bonfire, each person shared what family meant to them. The definitions varied, but the theme remained. Family was choice. Family was respect. Family was showing up, not because you had to, but because you wanted to. When my turn came, I looked around the circle of faces lit by firelight, these people who'd chosen us as fiercely as we'd chosen them. Family. I said, is what happens when you stop accepting the unacceptable and start building the extraordinary. It's every person here who saw our scars and chose to help us heal rather than hurt us more. It's the courage to walk away from blood that poisons so you can choose bonds that nourish. Emma added, family is people who love your mom for who she is, not what she has, who see me as Emma, not as a lottery ticket or possession, who show up for Tuesday dinners and Saturday science projects and random Wednesday worries. You're our family. You're our choice. And we choose you every single day. The waves crashed nearby stars, wheeled overhead, and love circled our fire like a living thing. This was wealth beyond measure. This was success beyond stocks. This was family beyond blood. The Morrison name, once synonymous with greed and manipulation, now stood for innovation and integrity. The family that had tried to destroy us had instead freed us to build something magnificent. And build we would. Companies and foundations, technologies and traditions, love and legacies. We'd build until our chosen family grew so large, so bright, so beautiful that the darkness of our origin story would be nothing but contrast, showing how far we'd come. To family, someone called out, raising a s'more toward the stars. To choice, we answered our voices, carrying across the ocean into the night toward all the tomorrows we'd create together. The end was really just the beginning, and what a beautiful beginning it was. As I sit here now sharing our story with you, I'm struck by how many of you might be sitting at your own crossroads. Maybe you're the family scapegoat watching relatives live off your kindness while calling you failure. Maybe you're hiding your success to avoid their jealousy. Maybe you're torn between loyalty and self-preservation. I want you to know choosing yourself isn't selfish, it's necessary. The money I gave my family didn't buy their love, it subsidized their contempt. The success I hid to spare their feelings only fueled their disrespect. The boundaries I failed to set nearly cost me everything that mattered. But here's the beauty, it's never too late to choose differently. It's never too late to stop funding your own destruction. It's never too late to build the family you deserve, even if it shares no DNA with you. So here's my question for you. What would you do if you discovered your biggest critics were living off your biggest achievements? Would you continue in silence, or would you finally choose freedom? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Have you ever had to choose between family and freedom? How did you handle relatives who took without giving? What does chosen family mean to you? If this story resonated with you, please like and subscribe. Share it with someone who might need to hear that they're not alone, that choosing yourself is not just okay, but necessary. Thank you for joining Emma and me on this journey. Remember, you can't build an empire while carrying dead weight. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is let go. Until next time, keep choosing wisely, loving freely, and building boldly. With gratitude and hope, Sandra.